British Eurosport, Martin Haven, Jeremy Shaw and Toby Moody joining you for coverage through till 11 o'clock tomorrow morning, 10 British summer time on the Big Dog. Vanina Ix in the pits in the Creation Autosportive car. Those of you that have wondered where the Creation car has got to, 19th is the answer despite more problems than they can shake a spanner at. Body coming off the front for adjustments off the back. Now look at the triple damper setup at the front, one on either side for the suspension, and the third controls ride height, bump and rebound. And talking to Jamie Campbell-Walter before the race, Jeremy, he was saying it was that third damper in that front suspension that was causing them all their problems. They sorted it out, they believe, changing it from a bucking Bronco into what he described as a bit of a Rolls Royce.
Yeah, it's certainly a lot happier he was with the handling of that car, Jamie Campbell-Walter. It's a common problem with that car. I guess it porpoises, which is a sort of term the drivers use for it. The car just sort of pitches on its own. It's an aerodynamic imbalance basically, but it can be caused by the mechanical setup on the car, and it's a common complaint that they have with that Creation chassis. And Jamie said they kind of cured that this morning, but then they found that the right height of the car was way too high and therefore wasn't producing the downforce. The lower you can run the car to the road, the more downforce it produces. So they got rid of the porpoising, then they began lowering the car, but then the porpoising came back again. So it's a real setup issues that they're having with that Creation chassis.
Fourth position car in the pits at the moment. This is the Pescarolo 908 Peugeot, a sort of a hybrid, not electrical that is, but mechanically, of last year's works Peugeots. And ironically, it was that infamous pit lane incident in the first 40 minutes that involved that car that gave the number 7 Peugeot such damage after the immediate puncture. So that Peugeot regains the track, still in fourth position, just ahead of the 007 Aston Martin Lola that is in fifth position. Genet has come into the pits. The leader has come into the pits, so he is now giving up a lead that had just crept in the last couple of minutes, Jeremy and Martin, to just over 2 minutes. So he's been pulling out a good 3-4 seconds a lap over the last few laps ahead of Mr. Le Mans himself, Tom Christensen. So the leader in the pits.
Yes, and that's a scheduled stop. I reckon the car was last in on lap 113. It's now lap 125 for that car's 12th pit stop of the night, and extremely fine service there for both the number 7 and the number 9. Both of them running 12 laps.
Think so.
Yes, that's correct.
So quick Nick Minassian remains in the 11th place, car number 7, and Marc Genet stays out front in car number 9. Listen, guys, Claire Griffith emailed us a little while ago asking about tyres. Now, we've had a couple of questions over the weekend about tyres. First question is an easy one, Jeremy. Is there any limit to the number of tyres that the teams can use? Well, you can answer that. This isn't. It doesn't work. You just shake your head.
No, they can.
No, I know the answer. I'm asking you to answer.
As many tyres as they can afford, basically. Some of the teams can't afford, as many as the other teams, and that certainly is a factor. But no, regulation-wise, no limit on number of tyres you can use.
And to answer supplement little quotation quotes as well. There are a variety of different compounds that the manufacturers bring, from pretty hard, obviously, intermediates, wet weather tyres as well. They'll all have lined up the back because everybody is expecting rain tomorrow at some stage, perhaps lunchtime and onwards. They will also have a variety of gradual softer grades of race tyre, which they use harder ones when it's hotter and they need them to last longer, and softer ones, particularly at night, will often be the sort of soft tyre that they'd normally use for qualifying, which will do not just one lap but one really good stint, or in the cool 2 really good stints.
Yeah, that's right. Depending on the class, there's 3 or 4 different dry compounds that they can use for race conditions, and as you say, generally it's pretty much dictated by the track temperature. The Michelin officials or Hankook or Dunlop or whoever is providing the tyres, they have their own sort of threshold of the track temperature that they go from to determine which type of tyre, construction and compound they will put on each particular car as the race progresses. And right now we'd certainly be getting towards the softer tyre. again, you run that trade-off. You want to make sure that the tyre is fast, but you need that durability as well, because particularly this year, we're changing the regulations, so the tyre stops take longer, the tyre changes, I should say, take longer than they have done in the past. So you really do want to minimise the number of times you change the tyres.
Just saw the third place Corvette in the GT1 class lead. Formula 2 driver Julian Jus. It's the first real major sports car outing for Jus. He's got a lot of single-seater experience under his belt. He's in the Luc Alphon Venture car, and there's now a really quite large margin at the top of GT1. The two Corvettes, the CompuWare Corvettes, were running first and second, separated by inches before the first safety car. That put them better than half a lap apart. Johnny O'Connell is at the wheel of Corvette number 63. That's in 19th place, leading GT1. 23rd place, second in GT1, but on the same lap, 2 minutes 20 seconds behind is Olivier Beretta. So they still haven't really managed to catch up that pace car created gap between those two Corvettes, and they are, Jeremy, so equal that nothing other than some problem for one or the other is going to close or open that gap up again.
That's right, and as you say, just over two. There is the class leading Risi Competizione car onto pit lane. Jaime Mello has been doing a pretty lengthy stint in that car.
And we had Pierre Caffer up here a few minutes ago. Jaime Mello shaking his head there. Do you want to get out?
No, Jamie's quite happy in there.
I'm hogging this
having
one.
A great time.
3 lights on the side as he fires it back up.
That's just a flashing.
And they have all gone off, so it should actually have showed 1 as the class leader.
Yeah, sorry, as soon as he leaves the pit lane.
Very doos.
It'll register, and of course it'll register which driver's in the car as soon as
Let's
he
have a
leaves
look
the
and
pit
see
lane.
if it works. Should be 1 red light beside the number on the door. That's
light.
cracker then, isn't it? 1 yellow light, yes, sorry, 2 yellow lights on Tim Sugden's Ferrari, because that 92 Ferrari is now up into second place, British fans, and Long Patrick in the 76 IMSA Matmut Performance Porsche, which of course was battling for the lead in this class when it was still in daylight. He's now down in 3rd position. Oops.
Oh, wrong one, wrong slot.
Choose a garage, any garage. Things are not going that well for that car. He's overshot because there was a crowd of photographers waiting for what? The number 41 Ferrari or the number 33 Lola Judd, and he had to swerve round them because his pit box was right behind them. Frankly, I think I would have tried to plough them down.
Yes.
It would have cost less time.
They would have got out of the way eventually, Martin.
Well, you see, because it's not got an Audi nose, Jeremy, they wouldn't have got sucked in. They went on straight over the top.
Yeah, you know, things are not going well for this 009 car. They're a long way down. They've lost time with that water pump problem, the alternator problem, and a cracked water tank header as well. So just one drama after another.
Okay, well, after the pit stop of Marc Genet in the leading number 9 Peugeot, the lead has tumbled from nearly 2 minutes to 1 minute 11 for Genet over the leading and really sole works Audi, of course, of Tom Christensen. Minute and 11.
Yeah, but the Christensen car is pretty much due a pit stop. I don't think that has been in, has it?
No.
This time around.
No.
I think we should be coming in this time, I reckon.
We've got a very handy little column as we see the 97 Ferrari, which if the screen would stop moving is 4th in GT2. That's on pit 97, 4th, yeah, Fabio Bobini. Very handy little column on our timing screens to tell us how many pit stops everybody's had. Leader has had 12. Tom Christensen in second, only 9 pit stops so far. 11 for Bourdais, 10 for Bouillon, who are 3rd and 4th, 10 for Stefan Mucker, who is in 5th place, and so for Charles Waltzman, Olivier Panis, who are in 6th and 7th place. So at the moment, Tom Christensen's Audi probably owes most of the field a pit stop. But to get a little bit more idea of what's going on, let's welcome multiple Le Mans winner Frank Wieler to the Eurosport booth. Now, Frank, you've been talking Eurosport all night long in German. Welcome to British Eurosport. How are you?
Thank you. I'm fine, thanks. It's funny to be on the other side for one race.
Now, tell us, you've been here a lot of times, you've seen a lot of Le Mans, you've been involved in a lot of crazy races. Have you ever seen a race this mad?
No, honestly not. It's really strange. I mean, we are just almost 8 hours into the race, and I think especially for Audi, it doesn't look really good. I mean, 2 cars are out of the race more or less. Number 3 is still around, but as everybody knows, far behind, very far behind. So it's quite tough. I mean, number 1 they stay in touch, and definitely they have all the chances. But it's going to be a very long night and a very difficult race.
The new car is a big jump, not an evolution, this is a revolution, a completely changed car in every aspect. Only the drivers are really the same as last year. And is that part of the problem that Audi has been struggling with?
Hard to tell. I mean, I was not involved in the development and testing, so I only know what drivers said, what people in the project, what they are telling me. I mean, it's a fact that testing was a lot more difficult this year because of always bad weather conditions. And to sort it out 100%, it's almost impossible, of course, but you want to reach, I don't know, 98 or 99%, you know, and that was very difficult this year. So, I mean, at the end of the day, we all know this week, most of the drivers were complaining about the handling. It was difficult to find a good setup. Unfortunately, we did not have the pre-test. It's the same for everybody, but we came with a new car, so it would have been a big help to have more laps out there. So altogether, it's more difficult than it has been before.
It looks now that as though the number one car is getting closer and closer to the right sort of setup and the right sort of lap times. The drivers are hardly comfortable and relaxed, but they know there's something that they can chase, and as a driver that's enough, is it?
Yes, sure. I mean, they, as I mentioned, they stay in touch. They do pretty good lap times.
Patrick Dempsey, how is it out there in the night of Le Mans?
Oh, it's incredible. It's a lot of fun. Visibility is minimal. You know, there becomes this sort of ghostly mist over the track, and everything becomes quite surreal. But it's enjoyable. It's a lot of fun. I have to keep pinching myself to stay focused on where I am and what's going on, in one turn at a time. The lap times for me are improving, making little mistakes here and there that I have to really be careful of, protect the gearbox and the brakes and in the car itself. But you know, each lap out there I'm learning a great deal. The caliber of drivers is just phenomenal. To watch them finesse a car through the turn. The LMP cars are just there, they fly by you like at lightning speed, and it's a beautiful ballet when you watch them all. It's fantastic.
So it's your first time here, but not the last?
Oh God, I hope not. I love it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Frank, you can relate when you first came here to this racetrack. I mean, it's an enormously exciting place, but just as we're talking, the number one Audi has gone back into the garage now. Obviously, if you've got more than just fuel and tyres to do, the very first thing, straight back into the garage so that you can get everybody working. What are they doing at the moment? Cleaning the screen? They seem to be working at the back of the car. Any ideas?
I mean, the bad thing is, it's pretty sure that this is not a normal pit stop, you know, and I don't know what they are doing at the moment. I did not follow what the car was doing before.
The pit stop was on schedule in terms of time, Frank. It's done 13 laps since this last stop, so it was due for a pit stop right now. Do they have any sort of routine things that they do at 8 hours into the race?
What is possible is maybe that they have learned from the other cars now. They know where the weak points are, so it could also be that they just said we have to come in anyway, so we do the refueling, we push the car back, put the tires on, and then we check whether the other issues we had with the other cars are not happening on that one. So I hope that's the case, because then I guess he will be out on the circuit very quickly again.
See Ralph Gutner marshalling the troops, and of course one of the things that has always been so strong about Audi, Frank, is that there are no surprises mechanically. They know how to deal with everything on the car. This is one of our GT cars pulled up at the side of the track, and that is just on the Mulsanne Straight, or is that on the run down to Indianapolis? You probably recognise it better than I do now.
It's the entry of Hunadier, I would say.
Looks like it. So, quick final question.
What was your take on Lucas's incident out there at the Porsche curves?
Hard to tell. I mean, you do have a stupid bump, let's say, going into the corner. There we go, Tom going out. So I think it was not a real routine stop, but they wanted to check, is everything okay? And unfortunately, it didn't take too long, so he's back on the track. I think Lucas, I don't know, you do have a very difficult bump at the entry of the corner, and maybe he was hitting it at the wrong time and he was losing it. Maybe there was a technical problem. I really don't know. We just have Marco with us, and he didn't know what it was. Unfortunately, out.
Welcome back live to Le Mans, where you can see the lead Lola Aston Martin. 5th place for this car. Stefan Mucker staying at the wheel, receiving polish and a bit of a fuel up as well. Incidentally, some of the viewers asking us why some cars have one fuel hose and some have two. Well, if you have either system, you have to get fuel in and let air out at the same time. Normally you'll do fuel in on one side of the car and have a vent bottle or a vent hose on the other side to let the air escape as the fuel rushes in. Otherwise, you'd be stood there trying to fuel it as long as you would do your own road car, which doesn't really work as far as racing goes. So sometimes you have one fuel hose with air going up the outside and fuel down the inside. Sometimes you use fuel hoses on opposite sides of the car. And you'll notice with the Corvette, their fuel connector is at the end of a long piece of pipe that they jam right into the bowels of the car somewhere. So Lord only knows where the dry brake coupling on that is. Peugeot lead the race. Marc Genet at the wheel of car number 9. Tom Christensen's just made an unscheduled pit stop in the Audi number 1. That's his 10th stop. He is now a lap at least behind the race leader, Jeremy Shaw, as that cycles round. We'll get to find out where. But closing in fact, he's now dropped to 3rd place. So Peugeot 1 and 2, the 8 car of Sébastien Bourdais, which is about the quickest thing out there at the moment, has now moved up into 2nd place. And the Pescarolo Peugeot, which has just made another unscheduled pit stop, is in 4th position, but on the same lap as effectively the remaining Audi.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. Jean-Christophe Bouillon had taken over that car just on that 123. 2 laps later, or two laps ago, he was on pit lane one more time. We couldn't see from here, we didn't see any pictures exactly what happened, but clearly was an unscheduled stop for car number 17, but still in 4th place.
Well, Alan Simonson racing here in Le Mans. His regular British GT teammate Hector Lester managed a 3rd place at Knock Hill without his quick teammate, so that's not a bad job. Hello to everybody watching there in the pub, and to many of you watching in the pub with a nice glass of wine or a beer, particularly John Cleland. We'll have more in just a second.
Dr. Ulrich, das Auto Nummer 1 war gerade in der Garage. Was war los?
Number 1 car went into the garage. What was
wir hatten
up?
das schon vorher geplant. Wir haben die Ladeluftkühler ausgeblasen. Es ist relativ viel Sand
Checking
auf der Strecke gewesen und der hat
air
langsam und
ducts, the
langsam
air
ein bisschen
vents.
die Ladeluftkühler
Looked as though we were running
zugelegt
into
und
a bit of an
die Temperaturen
overheating
sind gestiegen.
problem.
Und bevor irgendetwas passiert daraus, wollten wir das in Ordnung bringen.
We've seen what's been happening to the other cars, and so we needed to check it.
Wie sieht Ihr Resümee aus nach den ersten Stunden in Le Mans bislang?
Want to give us a quick run through what happened in the opening hours?
Wir haben jetzt nur mehr dieses Auto.
We had problems, first of all, with the number 3 car. That really has caused us a lot of problems. Fuel pressure problems. We've changed the fuel pump on the car. And the number 2 car, of course, we've also seen has crashed out. Lucas Lohr putting his hand up and saying, I think that was my fault and not a problem with the car, which is what it certainly looked like. Now, we've had a selection of guests coming in and joining us here in the booth here at British Eurosport, and I make no apologies for inviting in an old chum of, well, an old chum of the programme, that's what Hindhoff would say down in the shed. He's just been down on Radio Le Mans. Welcome to Dario Franchitti. How are you finding your Le Mans? Have you got your voice back, by the way?
I'm working on the voice. The voice is not sounding too good right now, but I'm working on it.
Judging by the pictures that Marino showed me of you and the guys the other evening, I think you may be the only one who can A, talk, or B, stand.
Pretty much.
It's a bit of a stag night stroke Le Mans boys holiday. Is that how you sold it back home?
No, not really, actually. The stag night was actually a friend of ours from Yorkshire, Alex Deaton.
Oh my God, Alex Deaton. Sorry to interrupt there. I know Alex very well. Enough said, Dario. Enough said.
He called us the Thursday morning, arriving at the circuit, and said, I'm going to Le Mans. Where should I go? And it was like, oh my God, we've just driven in the gate. So we met up at the driver parade, but to be at the driver parade, we were standing at a bar with a Scottish flag and pretty much hurling abuse at anybody we knew, which was quite a lot of the drivers. So we got a good response and really had a good time with that.
It's quite a good place to come as a fan, isn't it? Just to have a bit of a party weekend.
It's amazing. From the moment I arrived, I cannot tell you how cool this is.
I hope this isn't going out wide across the States. You may not get a pass out next time.
We're cool.
You sold it well, Dario, yeah?
I'd love to be driving here, I'll tell you. It's fun to have a good time and everything, but to be back in the car would be amazing.
Now, Dario, I remember when you won the Indy 500, one of the things that really struck a chord with me, having known you for a while as well, is how much it meant to you as a fan, as much as a racing driver, especially with your hero Jim Clark and Jackie Stewart, these guys. Now, the Triple Crown obviously is what a lot of people talk about. Jacques Villeneuve wanting to do it, but surely F1 maybe is something else, but this has got to be a doable deal for you.
I think I would hope so. You know, I was lucky enough to win Indy and Daytona in a 12-month period, along with our class at Sebring. So that was a pretty good 12 months. To be able to come here and to race here, first of all, would be amazing. But you gotta be on your game here. I mean, I come against Audi and Peugeot and drivers like McNish and Tom, and bloody hard. So hopefully we can put together a deal at some point to come and do it right.
Well, you got mates in Nishi and Johnny Molam that I'm sure between the three of you, and obviously your brother as well, because pretty decent team you can put together.
Oh, we could put together a good team. We just have to find someone that wants to suffer us all on the same team.
As long as Alex Deaton's not here, you'll be okay.
He could be team manager.
He could be, oh my God. What
listen, you're keeping your hand in racing sports cars as well in the States as well whenever you get a chance to, and that's obviously, that variety kind of stands you in good stead whatever you turn your hand to. You've got a little bit more experience, but how does something like Daytona compare to something like Le Mans, do you think?
I don't think in sports cars nothing compares to Le Mans. Really, having now been here, nothing compares to it. You know, Daytona is great and everything, but it's the Daytona prototypes. It was a much lower tech formula, and we're lucky enough that when I go there with the Ganassi team, it's like coming here with Audi, their first class. You know, that makes the job a bit easier. But it's a great race, but again, nothing compares to it. It's amazing.
Okay, here's the deal. It's a 3-year plan. Okay, you go back and you talk to Chip and you say, Chip, we have got to go on holiday to Le Mans. It's the greatest boys' weekend. When he gets here, then the next year you bring him back with a car and a team, because he will be sold.
Not a bad idea, that.
Work with Dr. Ulrich. He came here on a boys' weekend with Audi Sport UK boys. Next year he came back with a prototype team. So there's your plan. 12 months away. Get Chip down here for a boys' weekend, and we'll start another dynasty. I like it too. We're going to take a quick commercial break. If Dario's got any voice the other side of it, we'll be back for another couple of minutes. Stay with us live on Eurosport. Welcome back live to Le Mans, where Audi number 3 returns to the garage. This time, though, it looks as though it might return to the track without going back in for an extended stay. This car has been nothing but a heartache for the Yost Audi team, and in fact, the number 2 car also out of action. They've just got one car remaining. Effectively, car number 1 in 3rd place. Peugeot 1st and 2nd. We're joined in the Eurosport booth here by Dario Franchitti. Dario, while you've still got a voice left in between the booze and the fags, obviously, and the party, obviously,
allegedly,
I've got a bad reputation here.
Yeah, no, but you will have by the time you leave here. We were just talking during the break about how this compares to something. Obviously, you've got intimate experience of like Indianapolis, and you were saying really there's nothing even remotely close to being in common.
No, well, the thing I don't understand with Indy, I haven't never been there as a fan, so I don't know it, because when I'm at the track, I focus on driving the car and doing what I got to do, and I don't really go out unless I'm going for dinner, and it's as quick as I can eat and get back to the track. It's all about work, and so you don't get a chance to enjoy it, which when I retire, I'll be going there as a fan too. Believe me, that'll be a good one.
Yeah, you need to do a few of these fan weekends. Well, we're going to catch up with one of your partners in crime, David Brabham, in a moment or two. Just looking at the RML Lola Mazda, that's currently running 4th in the LMP2 class. It's a lap or so behind Xavi Pompidou in the speedy Savard car, so plenty of British interest there. And of course, Porsche still 1st and 2nd in the LMP2 class. And we'll try and do a quick translation of David Brabham from Australian to English.
David, the start of the race was quite difficult for Peugeot, but you are in the car who is leading the race.
Yeah, I mean, what an interesting beginning of this one. Jeez. So much been going on. But, you know, so far, car number 9's just been running a faultless race at the moment. And we just keep it going, and we're obviously leading at the moment, but we obviously know there's a long way to go. The number 8 Peugeot is now back up to second, so Peugeot running first and second, Audi third, so it's still a great battle.
Do you know why there is so many incidents in the beginning? Audi, Peugeot, do you think it's because there is a big fight, so you push as hard as you can?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not really sure I know how to answer that one, but yeah, obviously there's a lot of pressure to win the race, but you know, sometimes these things just happen, and they have happened. For us, they haven't at the moment. We're still going okay. We just got to keep it going like that, you know, get it all the way to the end.
Thank you, David.
Okay, thanks.
Well, David Braben, former Le Mans winner, unless, of course, you look in the record books, because the car was disqualified many months after he crossed the finish line, stood on the podium and took the trophy home. Dario, a message just came in from John Clennon there saying apparently the wine isn't doing your throat any good. Doesn't seem to be doing his any harm, judging by the amount he's necking at home. But obviously, this is a huge event for the fans. I mean, there's over 250,000 people coming in through the gate this weekend. It is the biggest British race, including the British Grand Prix. Now you've seen it for the first time, to kind of start to really see the appeal somehow. Oh yeah, you definitely get it. You know, I did a road trip down here. I got dropped off. I flew into Heathrow and my car was waiting there for me. My friend Kevin McGarrity and I did a road trip down, and we've done the whole experience. So it is, for a fan, I don't think I've been a better race as a fan. It's amazing. Slightly less violent than Sebring, and a little bit longer, of course. The whole week, I mean, it's just in this enormous thing. First-time drivers are always staggered about, you know, how long the tech takes, and then, you know, a couple of days here practicing and qualifying, then the madness of the drivers' parade. I mean, again, you know, that's the kind of sort of fervour, I think, that even coming from the States takes people really quite by surprise. That definitely is. It's kind of like the 500 in the fact there's a lot of history, and there's a lot of showmanship goes into the whole thing, and it's great. It makes it a better atmosphere. It's we were out walking just now, just before I came up here, out checking the cars out at different corners, and there's a lot of people still out there having a good time, and a lot of people just watching the cars as well, just standing still at the corners from the start of the race. That's 6.5 plus 7 hours nearly. It's pretty impressive. Well, you see, that's the bonus of Radio Le Mans, because wherever you are around the circuit, you can have the commentary in your ear all the time, and you know, they're nearly as opinionated as we are. Oh, definitely. And a lot of people showing support. It's pretty cool. A lot of different people wearing different teams' colours, and you know, that's what I guess that gives the passion to the race.
It was. We were only saying earlier, like we've got the Ginetta team coming into it for the first time. The amount of Ginetta flags and things that the Brits love an underdog, don't they? They love somebody coming in and doing something that is way over and above what you'd expected, and that's why Spiker are popular for the same sort of logic. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And you look at the car that Marino's driving with Paul Drayson and Johnny Cock. I mean, Paul Drayson's dream was to come to Le Mans and drive the car. You know, and here he is doing it, and you know, the Aston Martin team is the quintessential British team, and it's really cool to see, and they're doing a hell of a job. So that's fun to be a part of that in some way, even if it is only carrying Marino's helmet. And whispering support from the balcony. Is he getting a prima donna on you now? Now he's having to look after him this weekend.
I'm just returning the favour. Believe me, he's looked after me many a race over the years, so I'm just returning the favour.
That's what family's all about, mate, isn't it?
Listen, Dario, get back on the Strepsils. Other throat remedies are available. Thank you very much for coming up. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Thanks, guys.
Dario Franchitti here on a boys' weekend. No harm, no foul. Cheers, Dario. We'll see you soon. So the race continues to, well, I mean, hang wildly in the balance, vacillating fortunes and vacillating driver lineups and commentator lineups as well. Mark Cole, Liz Halliday now stepping in. They haven't brought any cake or cups of tea or drinks or anything with them, so I'm entirely impressed with that. Yeah, sorry, doesn't cover it. So Marc Genet leads from Sebastian Bourdais. Don't forget, if you are watching at home and you're thinking, well, do you know, I might stay up for another 2 or 3 hours and watch this, or maybe even join the all-night club through the night. If you want the full timing and scoring, you don't have to wait for us to give you the rundown or wait for the graphics. Get the computer out, get the laptop out. LeMans.org is the official website of the Le Mans 24 Hours, and you can have live timing. It updates about once a minute, which is 3 times a lap, which is a lot more than we get from most single-seater championships, let me tell you. So LeMans.org, and if you want to know anything that we're not telling you, lemon.eurosport@yahoo.com is the email address. Back after this.
Le Mans 2009, powered by Shell.
After the dust and gravel of Brazil and the Azores, this time they're on the asphalt in Belgium. Round 4 of the title race and a different set of challenges as the white knuckle ride continues. The Intercontinental Rally Challenge from Belgium, Friday at 19:15, live on Eurosport.
Welcome back to the Ultimate Boys Weekend and the world's greatest motor race, Le Mans, live on Eurosport. And welcome to those of you who are with us for the Up All Night Club. Yes, all-night coverage continues throughout the 24 hours until 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. And up until 11 tomorrow morning, we'll be here on Eurosport and British Eurosport, bringing you all the action and all the news and contact between the third place GT2 car, that is Patrick Pilet in the IMSA Matmut Porsche. That is at the first chicane on the Mulsanne straight. Patrick Pilet grabbing hold of that as it gyrated. He was hit from behind quite clearly there. Certainly looked like, and is rejoining the Mulsanne. Actually, which brings us down to the forum quite quickly. That's the first chicane, second chicane. Pat's long. Okay, on the screen it says Patrick Pilet. So on our timing screen it says Patrick Pilet. On our TV screen it says Patrick Long. So one of them in there somewhere. Sort it out.
It's still a Patrick.
It's a Patrick. Yeah, it's either a long one or a Pili one, but it is Patrick. Listen, quick question, Mark. You'll remember this. Bit of controversy on the forums on the Eurosport website. Sorry, slip of the tongue. About why the chicanes were introduced into the Mulsanne. The general consensus being the FIA refused to administer or accredit any event with a straight longer than 2 kilometres.
Exactly right, yeah. The only exception was Spa, of course, but they said as Spa was going uphill, it didn't really matter. It was very political at the time, and the ACO was, the FIA was trying at that time to squash Le Mans. Le Mans was getting more and more popular, sucking in more and more manufacturers, and this is the way that they thought they could perhaps do something about this. Of course, the ACO reacted, said, oh, no problem, 2 chicanes, and still the world's biggest event.
Supplementary question is that there's a degree of argument now about where Mark Webber and then Peter Dumbreck flew their Mercedes. Now, of course, Webber flew twice, although officially Mercedes would only own up to 1. Webber himself owned up to 2 in versions, and there are photos of him being on his head. But the Dumbreck incident particularly was not on the Mulsanne. It was on that little kink in the right-hander on the way between Mulsanne and Indianapolis, an unnamed Dumbreck's jump, I suppose we should now call it, or Dumbreck's pad. I don't know.
Yeah, well, in fact, that's where Webber went off as well earlier on. The 2 of them went off at the same place, which is at the 9-kilometre mark and into the trees. Luckily for Dumbreck, very young trees, and it was a soft landing. And
yes, they just cleared a fire break, and the car actually landed between 2 rows of trees in a freshly ploughed fire break, so he could not have been luckier. In the pit lane is our second place Peugeot. This is number 8 car of Sebastian Bourdais, and Liz Halliday joining us again in the booth after a bit of a break. Jeremy was going to give you a bit of gen on that, but is this an unexpected stop, Jeremy? No, he's done 13 laps or 12? 13. Okay, so just managing to squeeze another 13 lap stint out. Liz, it's been a bit of a manic race so far. Is there any impression downstairs that things might be quietening down, or?
Well, you know, I think we've had so much action so far, and there's still so much going on in all the classes. I don't think this is going to slow down at all. It's still dry. We're going into night. Things are cooling off. The cars will be getting quicker. The circuit's rubbered up. I don't think things are going to calm down at all. I think people are going to carry on pushing. I think the consistent pace is going to continue to be very quick.
New nose on the Peugeot. Now, this may not be some drama. This may be the night-time nose. They may have slightly different light arrangements, slightly better light arrangements. Also, these louvers that we keep talking about in the wing over the wheels that extract air, they may have a different setup there. As the air gets cooler and denser, the track gets cooler, they get more grip, mechanical grip from the tyres. They may just be easing off the aero a bit there to give a little less downforce on the nighttime nose, so that the car's not quite so darty when you turn in. That might be a possibility.
I mean, it's possible. I personally would doubt it. I don't think that Peugeot would have planned in something that would take any extra time. I mean, certainly in any car I've ever driven, you've got everything built in, the lights are built in. It could be that the louvers have been a bit damaged. That does happen very often. They get ripped off as you go. Sometimes you reach a point in the race where you say, right, we've got a bit of time. We can make that change to make sure it takes you through and you don't risk something happening because of that. That's definitely possible. We don't know if maybe they've had a hit or two here and there, but it's hard to say really, but I wouldn't have thought that they would have planned that in. I wouldn't have thought, but I could be wrong.
Still beside the number 8 on the Peugeot are those 2 red lights. Each class has a different set of coloured red lights. There are 3 of them. The leader in each class has 1 illuminated, second place 2, third place 3 for the LMP1 cars. It's red lights for the LMP2, it's blue lights, green lights for the GT1 and yellow lights for the GT2. And while we're talking about it, let's run through the classes. In GT2, Ferrari, Porsche. Jaime Meylan in car 82 leads Tim Sugden, and in third place Patrick Pilet, who we just saw being shoved off into the gravel. As we look at Richard Dean making a pit stop in 19th place, Ginetta Zytek. The car he shares with Nigel Moore and Lawrence Tomlinson. Engine cover off. Looks like that might be a bit of a suspension adjustment, Mark.
Yeah, well, both these cars, both these Zyteks have had problems with sticking rear wheels. It held up Peter Hartmann for a while in the Stracker car, and this car also had that problem earlier. This is something different though.
Yeah, it looks like they're
Vous avez poussé le plus fort possible. Vous avez eu un petit problème.
Sebastian, you've been setting some really quick times in that number 8 car. You've been really pushing hard. We've had a few tyre problems as well. A little bit frustrating. We had quite a big lead, unfortunately, just a small incident that we've not suffered before. Very frustrating. It's pretty difficult, unfortunately. Porsche slowed me down. A Porsche slowed me down as well. Had a little clash, and unfortunately that's a little bit of a problem. In the beginning of the night, it's always a little bit difficult. Huge difference in speed between our cars and the GT2s. So he's obviously the man who pushed off Patrick Pilet earlier. Any problems now? Is the track difficult? It is a little bit, but because there's so much traffic, still so many cars in the race, it is difficult to get through them all. Difficult for us. Peugeot still leading the race. Are you going to try and attack to take the lead? Yeah, I hope so. Small incidents can often decide the race. So we're not sure if we can attack hard or just try and keep a safe second place. Well, Mark Cole, he talked about the incident with a slower Porsche. That then pretty much points the finger at him being the man who punted off Patrick Pilet. That's the only Porsche we've seen going off. Of course, there could have been any number of other bits of contact away from that one particular camera shot we were seeing. GT1 second place car on pit road, and if the screen would ever come back to us, could tell you where they are overall, apart from second in GT1. Olivier Beretta is the man who brought the car in 23rd as they do their 2-man tyre change, well choreographed. But they're still several places behind their teammates in a Corvette 1-2.
We're back at Eurosport live here at Le Mans. We are now coming up to 23:22 here at Lausanne. Night has fallen for a long time, as you can see now. On board them with the One of the Corvettes. Very interesting tonight, Liz. The Corvettes, of course, got split by the first safety car. Normally they love to run together throughout the event. They're actually on diametrically opposite sides of the circuit, so they're running 7 kilometres apart. And I can't imagine, unless one of them has a problem, they're ever going to close that gap.
No, I don't think so. I mean, Corvette is so incredibly reliable, and they have a reputation of running 1-2 right next to each other all the way through these sort of races. You know, at Sebring and Le Mans 24 Hours even, they tend to finish right around each other unless something astronomical happens, because they're such a reliable car. So yeah, that is quite interesting. They're completely split apart. Who knows, maybe that's actually helping their pitting. At least they're not straight together.
Just watching before Campanella, 2 of the Astons running together, 2 of the Peugeots running together, but the Corvettes, whoop, a country mile apart. And they don't like that, Martin, do they? Like their photo opportunities, even in the night.
Well, they can get a photo opportunity at 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. That'll be the least of their worries at the moment. All they've got to try and do is get their cars to the end of the race, and at the moment that's not easy, necessarily going to be very easy. We're only 9 hours in. We've only had 4 official retirements, but we've had more drama than you can possibly imagine in most normal race weekends.
Well, 2 of them, of course, Luke cars, aren't they? The Lucas Luhr car and the Luke Alfan car, when we saw Patrice Goslar go off very heavily there. Any news on Patrice? We heard he was a bit shaken, but...
No, we haven't been able to hear anything on that yet. Yeah, it's obviously, I mean, that car's been retired, I take it. Obviously, that's all happened on my way back.
We heard the engine went back 2 feet.
Ah, well, that would be
which on a
yes,
Corvette is quite a thump,
it's quite a long way, yeah, on such a sturdy car as well.
Might actually improve the balance a little.
Oh, you never know.
Yeah, but
we ask them that next.
On the front, yes.
Yeah, but the problem is it no longer meets ACA regulations, so they're disqualified anyway.
They'll have to work their way up to that one.
Oh, yeah, but that's very, very sad for normally lucky Luke Alfan. I mean, they've had such a good campaign in the LMS over the last 2 years. And
yeah,
they were on for a podium, weren't they, on that car?
They put such an effort in, and you know they work so hard to be right up there with all the top manufacturers. So that really is a blow to them.
Peugeot number 9 rejoins from the pit lane. Marc Genet stays aboard. Number 7 is in as well. Quick Nick Minassian in 11th place in that car. Also Giorgio Mondini, 7th place. The number 15 Collis Audi just made a regulation pit stop. Christian Alber's taking that one over. Charles Voltzmann in front of them in the other Collis car. They're 6th and 7th at the moment. So in the top 7 positions, we have got 6 diesel-engined cars. And 1 007 Aston Martin in 5th spot. So still flying the flag for Gulf, Aston Martin Racing and Lola.
Yeah, but
and Stefan Mucker at the wheel of that car.
What is so concerning probably to all the factories is that the 2 most potentially reliable cars in the race are those 14 and 15 R10s. I mean, they've proved they can go the distance year after year, and here they are, as you say, Martin, clawing their way up gradually, 6th and 7th. I mean, come the morning, those cars could be leading.
Well, I think the chat has all been about the Peugeot-Audi battle, but people are forgetting about the Audi R10s that are quietly moving up the grid, like you've said, and, you know, with a lot of rookie drivers in them as well. So I think that's a testament to them, that they're still running up there right in the top. It's a testament to the car as well. But, you know, certainly with rookies involved, I think that's very good. We're at the 9-hour mark, and all the drama's been the other ones. It's not involved them.
And don't forget, you don't have to miss a moment of it, because we're staying live on Eurosport and British Eurosport until 11 tomorrow morning before we go back to Eurosport 2. Well Cornish Chris Wadsworth wanted to know, why do we have to keep changing TV channels? Well, you don't. You can watch the tennis at Queen's and you can watch the Doku Libere, but if you want to watch Le Mans, follow us. It is one button. You know, you've got to get some exercise, you couch potatoes. So stay with us here live until 11 tomorrow morning, 10 British summertime on Eurosport International through the night. Vanina X getting out of the number 4 Creation car, and they're still, look, just at the top of page 2, still 19th place. Can't get onto page 1 in 18th place, chasing Phil Bennett's LMP2 Zytek, which is also on pit road. So there's not much. In fact, as they came down pit road, 8 seconds in that battle. Vanina getting out the car as we watched. Not sure what's happening with Phil Bennett's car, whether he's staying in or not. But you see, wherever you are at Le Mans, whatever you're watching, there is always a battle for position somewhere, isn't there? And this is a great one for the Creation team, your old team, Liz. I mean, they have just had such a nightmare with this car. The boys had no sleep on Friday night, and that was before they even started. No sleep on Saturday night, Le Mans 24 Hours, so they must be hanging.
Well, it is absolutely brilliant that they're actually here. I mean, of course, the team has had a lot of problems since we last ran the car, which was Laguna Seca when I drove with them as well. You know, a big accident at Petit Le Mans with Dean Sterling. So they've really had a bit of drama. They weren't sure if they were going to be here, so it's really great to see them here pushing hard. They're still running well after Jamie Campbell-Walter's trouble, where they actually had one of the fuel injectors break with him in the car. They were very lucky to make it back. And now the car seems to be running okay. I spoke to them when I was on break, and they said it is going all right now. They're pushing hard, and they're just trying to keep it consistent now. So I really hope for them that they're going to have a strong finish.
Pit lane penalty mark for your favourite car, the number 23 Ginetta Zytek.
Yeah, the little black Straka Zytek, and again I'm afraid it's Nick Leventis who's in trouble. 71 kilometres an hour in the pit lane, it's a 60 limit. He'll get a stop and go penalty and 3 points. So
I mean, really, there's no room for that anymore, I'm afraid. It is one of those things that you just have to drill into your head as a driver, and I think sometimes when you get tired, you're thinking about your pit stop strategy and what's going to happen. Sometimes you just forget to push that button. Before you know it, it's in. And sometimes the way it happens is when a driver's just gone out, if the other driver has taken it off, that driver heads out of pit lane flat out thinking the limiter is on. Yeah, that's a lot of time when that happens.
He had just taken it from Peter Hardman, in fact, so that underlines exactly what Liz is saying.
I mean, that has happened to me before. You expect it to be on, you gun it out of the pits quickly, waiting for it to catch. Before you know it, you've exceeded the speed limit without even meaning to. Bang, stop and go penalty.
Well, the other thing is the speed limit could have been broken on the way into the pits by Peter Hardman. So although he's at the wheel now, it wasn't necessarily his fault. We can't call that one. Here is Vanina X. Heard from Jackie earlier on Eurosport. Of course, Vanina with the creation crew, looking probably about as happy as I think she's been all weekend, which tells us a little bit about how comfortable the car might be, and looks as though we are getting ready to have a quick chat with her as well. So we'll do that if we can in a moment.
Yeah, in fact, Martin, I can just add something to that. I'm just talking to Jamie Campbell-Walter before he came up, and he again reiterated, the mistake they made on Wednesday night sending her out. But he said the team has really come together over the last few days. He said that adversity has really helped, and he said that they're getting on really well now, the team. They're starting to make progress. They came here with an untested, untried car. Anyway, let Vanina tell us all about it. She's down in the pits now.
Vanina, comment ça se passe? On a eu un début difficile, on a dû changer
d'injecteur,
je suis passé par le bac à gravier, mais maintenant ça va.
Well, we made some changes on the car and
rebondissement. La voiture
had some big problems there.
Dès qu'on arrive à 300 km/h dans le freinage, on a essayé de remonter la caisse.
She said on the bumpers, which I think she means they've had some brake problems, and they've had to raise the right height a bit. It's going better now. But it's still not easy to drive or to brake. Temperatures says are okay. We've got an open car, so we're not getting too hot. Yeah. Oh, it's going to be a long night, Liz.
Yeah, I mean, I think what Vanina's saying is they're having some trouble with the bump rubbers, possibly. This was an issue in the creation when I drove it as well. Certainly with the second car, it was an issue more so than the one I was in. They do tend to get an inherent porpoise in the car, which basically means the front end of the car rises up and down on the straight, and it is actually quite severe when you're experiencing it, to the point where you can't really see where you're going. And usually in the creation car, that tends to go away when you hit the brakes and the car compresses. However, with Le Mans, you've got very long straights. The last thing you need is a car that's heavily porpoising. With the road change that we get as well, when you enter onto the Mulsanne straight, there is a bit of a graduation in the road. It's not something that would be comfortable, and I know they had worked on that a lot, but I'm guessing that's still a little bit of a problem, perhaps. The car just being a little bit twitchy in places, and probably a little bit sharper than she's used to driving in an LMP1 car, but she's been very consistent. She's done a great job, and I think they're all probably settling into that car now, so hopefully they're just going to keep pushing on.
Yeah, I mean, we have been fairly critical, haven't we, that they bought the car from Carolina. It hasn't been run this year, and then just straight into Le Mans, no proper testing, and had to learn as they've gone along this whole week. Yeah,
just such a dedicated team, and we're just so happy to see them here. And
going for a break.
I think we're just going for a break, so be back in a minute. Soon. Welcome back to the Le Mans 24 Hours. You are live here with Eurosport. We're just watching one of the LMP1 cars, one of the Peugeot cars, who's currently leading this race. It's all been going on here. So much action. It's been Audi, Peugeot, so many problems for Audi as well. It's really not been the drama that they've been after. And we're joined now by Johnny Mullum, who's here to shed some more light on what's going on down there, I think.
It has been actually really, really interesting to see that you wouldn't have dreamed at this early on in the race that you'd be having a problem where you've really only got one Audi that's going to actually be taking the fight to Peugeot. So that's the situation that we've had at the moment. I'm actually really surprised that really if you're going to have anybody winning this race, it's going to be the #1 Audi. But I think now that that you're in a position where the Peugeot's probably going to, certainly the #9 Peugeot, actually have it all pretty much sorted out. And I hope at this stage that Brabs is certainly smiling down there, because it really looks like this race is coming to him, and the Audis just don't have the pace to go with the Peugeots.
Well, Johnny, we've also picked up the fact that the two Collis cars, which are ultra reliable, of course, they've been going for so long, the R10s, that they're gradually moving up the order. And who knows, tomorrow morning we wake up, I know you'll be on the road back to England, but we could wake up here and find, wow, they're leading.
I don't know about that, but I'm very, very impressed. I'm having a problem here with my mic, actually. I've basically got it in my mouth, and it's still, I can hardly hear it. But basically, I would say that car I'm very impressed with, for the simple reason that they're in a situation where they've only got two drivers, and they're going to really ache tomorrow. But at the moment, they're absolutely doing a sterling job, and I'm really, really impressed with that.
So do we know if their other driver is going to get in the car? Are we going to have some sort of force majeure there, or what's going to happen there? Do you have any more news on that?
No, as far as I know, they're running two drivers the entire race. Those are the rules. And
back to the old days.
So in the old days they used to do it with two, didn't they, when men were men and all of that. So they're going to have to really work hard, and they won't be feeling it yet because it's only 11:30, and but when they get up at 4 in the morning and they're through the night, you see, normally you'd start triple or quadruple stinting in an LMP car so that you can actually give the drivers a rest that are out of the car. They won't have that luxury because there's only two of them, so they're going to really, really struggle. And at the moment they're doing incredibly well, and if they can keep that going, that will give them enough adrenaline to get them through this.
And one of the things I keep reiterating is we're talking about all this action that's going on and what's happening with Audi and with these drivers and everything. We're barely even scratching the surface of this 24 hours. That's what's incredible. It seems like it's been going on forever, but really, in the scheme of 24 hours, we're nowhere, and there's been so much going on, so much drama. One Audi that can win this race now out of 3, really.
Absolutely, and as we were saying before, the trouble is they don't have the race pace, so they're going to really be begging for a problem, a technical problem. And the #9 Peugeot, which is the car that really here is the sleeper, in my opinion, because it's got the experienced guys on board, the guys that are less likely to take risks, less likely to make a mistake. They're the guys with the lead, and you can't, with the Montagny car, perhaps, you'd be in a position where you think that maybe there'll be an error later or something, they're going to be pushing harder, something could happen. The Minassian car has done incredibly quick lap times, he's got nothing to lose, he's pushing, but he's essentially out of it, even though there's still 15 hours, 23 minutes to go. So, in my opinion, really, now, it's just down to the #9 or #8 Peugeot for the win.
Johnny, enough about the rest of them. What about you? How are you getting on with your racing in the States?
Oh, it's very kind of you to ask, Mark. I'm competing in the Ginetta Zytek with the hybrid engine. We ran at Salt Lake City and had a very good result there, nearly on the podium. So we're back at Lime Rock, and the Corsa Motorsports team and Steve Pruitt will be there, myself and Stephanie Hansen, and hopefully get on the podium there and keep building it. But it's early days for the project. The hybrid is incredibly difficult technically to get it sorted, and we're really, really struggling to get that to exactly where we want it. It's going to be an ongoing process.
Now, Lime Rock, that's a circuit that bites, isn't it?
I actually really like Lime Rock, and it's probably as far removed from Le Mans as you can possibly get.
It is a bull ring, isn't it?
It's like a little go-kart track, but I'm actually one of the drivers that doesn't slate it. I actually really, really love it, and you get 60, 70,000 people there, and it feels like there's 400,000 because it's such a small place, and it's just a fantastic little track.
Yeah, it's great television as well.
Absolutely, I love the whole thing about it, but I must admit, this one is the real jewel in the crown, and it's kind of hard to be sat up here. Much as I love talking to you guys, it is kind of hard being sat up here, and when I really feel, and I'm sure Liz could probably
feeling with you.
It's kind of hard to be sat up here watching them do it. And I found, I don't know about for Liz, but I found the start when they were lining up on the grid. That was the hardest bit for me, and in the end I actually left the grid, walked off somewhere else, kicked a few trees and stuff out the back. But it's lovely to see the way this is panning out, and I tell you what an exciting race. I cannot believe how much has happened in such a short period of time. If it carries on like this, who knows what can happen. Maybe you're right, maybe one of the old R10s could end up
this is what we're just, we're not ruling it out. That's the whole point. I mean, normally we get to the stage of the evening and you can just sort of go quiet for the night, you come back at 9 in the morning and nothing's changed. But I have a feeling that's not going to happen this year. We're going to have all sorts of things happening throughout the night. We're not going away. I mean, we are on air all the whole night. You're not going to miss anything on Eurosport this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't forget, you've got the Aston Martin still up there. I mean, the 008 car had a problem, but the 007 car still very, very strong, running a very strong 5th place. And their pace, give or take, is very similar to race pace to that of the Audi. So who knows what could happen? There's still a long, long way to go.
Well, everyone was saying, you know, it's going to be a fight for, you know, 7th and 8th place. And I think at the moment it's a fight for 4th or maybe even 3rd for a petrol car. And I think at this point in the race, that is not what anybody ever expected. They expected that might happen maybe after the night, maybe. But now, you know, 9 hours into the race, no one ever expected that.
Every single driver in that top 10, in fact, top 11, could realistically expect to perhaps be on the podium at the end of this race. There is no doubt in that. And, so at this stage, if you're in a position that you're running in 11th and you think you could be running in the top 3, then you're going to keep pushing to the very end.
Tom Christensen then in the pits. It looks like a routine stop at the moment down below our window. You can't see that at the moment. We're actually riding on board one of the Corvettes, aren't we? But Christensen not taking tyres, just taking fuel on. They've had a quick look around the car. Obviously nothing wrong. There we are. It's on your screen now.
This does look like a normal stop, for all intents and purposes. So
fuel and absolutely nothing else.
And they're absolutely going to need nothing but normal stops from now on if they want to win this race, I'm afraid. So,
well, like Peugeot, they're hoping they can quadruple stint these cars through the night with the dark hours. Of course, Peugeot's been doing it since the start of the race. Audi, I think, was a bit shocked by that. Johnny?
One thing that we haven't really touched upon and nobody really knows yet is the weather. And that most people I talk to, some people are saying it's going to rain, but it's not going to happen till the end of the race. Some people say it's going to rain an hour or two into the end of the race or before the end of the race. If that were to happen, that could really throw a variable in there that could really upset the apple cart, so to speak. And that's something that we have to remember. The R15, at this stage, they don't know it like the R10. They don't know what it's like in the wet weather. In last year's race, it really played into Audi's hands to have so much wet weather. That might not be the case this year. It might actually work against them, and Peugeot might be in a stronger position in the wet. And again, the Aston Martins probably don't really know what they've got it, so it could really, really show what could happen if it gets wet at the end of the race.
Well, Jeremy Shaw's just said to me that apparently it might even rain in 2 hours, so that would all be going on. So it could all be getting very exciting here very, very soon. And stand by for much more action here on Eurosport Live. Be back with us soon.
Back at Le Mans with Eurosport. We're live here in the 24 Hours of 77th edition. Just at this moment looking at the Krone car, not the Lola Judd of Xavier Pompidou. This is Tracy Krone's car, the one that he threw off, I think, 3 times in 4 hours during practice. I was talking to his team chief, Jeff Hazel, just half an hour ago, and they said they told Tracy on the grid, said, right, calm down, you're not going to throw the car off, you've got all that behind you, do a good job there, and you know, it'll all come to you. And it does seem to be doing that. Tracy's just brought the car in, he stayed on board it. That car is running at the moment in a very, very credible 6th place in GT2. And this is the hottest GT2 field we have had for years here.
It has, and it's changed about so much. That's what's so amazing. We've had so many swap arounds and lead changes. It's just been insane, and they've all had to push like they've been qualifying the entire time. And I'm wondering if it's going to make it all the way through like that, Johnny.
Well, I mean, it's very, very, very interesting you should say that, because obviously what they've lost already in the GT2 battle, the lead Felbermeyer car, because they had, I believe, the reserve pump failed and they were running it down to on reserve, couldn't get in because of fuel pressure issue. And that, in my mind, was one of the cars that was really looking to win GT2. And now you're in a position where you've got the Risi Ferrari, obviously a team I know very, very well. They know how to win this race. They've done it before, but they're going to have to push really, really hard. And when you push, you leave yourself open to the things happening. Maybe it's a bit of fluid from a radiator, which is what happened to us in 2007. A bit of dirt on the track. Or you may be more inclined to pick up a puncture because you're running a little bit more curb and you can hit one of the stones on the curbs to pick up a puncture. So all these guys, there's 3 or 4 in GT2 that are realistically in position to win that race. And you're exactly right, Liz. They are going to be pushing so hard to the end. And this race really has turned into, when you're in the fight for the win in the Le Mans 24 Hours, no matter what class you're in, you don't cruise around. It's only when you're in a position that you know that you can't win it on pace. That's when you run a certain race pace that's perhaps a second or so off of what you ultimately could do, because you know that the only way you're ever going to get a good result is with reliability. But certainly when you're in the fight for the class win, you are pushing every lap.
Got a problem here. Problem for the Risi Ferrari, the 82 car, the class leader. I think we had before a hang up there. Is that because there's a problem? No, No, I think it suddenly took a late decision to change tyres because they'd already taken the fuel nozzle off and they weren't changing tyres on the other side. But who knows? This is the class leader. It is Jaime Mello, and we just saw before that we saw the number 92 car with Tim Sugden on board. He's showing that with Rob Bell and Andrew Cicaldi. So all the class leaders coming in at the within seconds of each other.
We've also had a stop-and-go penalty here for car number 14. Another car speeding in pit lane. We've had quite a few that have had this happen. We've been talking about the various different ways that can happen. Obviously, what we were saying earlier, one of the easiest ways is that one of the drivers leaves the pit limiter off, the next driver jumps in, expects that it's on, fires it up the pit lane, and before he knows that he's been speeding. But certainly we've seen this happen a lot this time around, and now we've seen it happen again in LMP1.
I'd be interested to know if it's actually they're catching them at the entrance to the pit lane or the exit, because more often than not it'll happen on the entry. You just come in a little bit too quick. It doesn't matter if you push the pit lane speed limiter or not. If you're still going at 70 or 80 k's coming in, it's not going to stop you. It only holds you underneath it once you're underneath it. So quite easily done if you're a little bit hot coming in. Once these things normally on most cars that I've driven are on a latch, so hopefully the driver will just leave it latched. So to actually get done leaving your pit box for speeding is rather silly, so hopefully it's not something like that.
Babini and then in the 97 car, he's sitting in the pits at the moment, so all the class leaders all in within a lap of each other, and just looking down at what they've had, only 8 pit stops so far for the leading Rizzi car, 9 for the Dunlop JMW car. This car, it's the Pilette Porsche, that's had 10, 9 for this car, the Babini car, and 9 for Bergmeister and Krohn. So at the moment, Rizzi are really managing that car well, aren't they, with Heimlello and crew.
Well, Jaime Mika and Pierre Caffa, Mika Salo and Pierre Caffa, fantastic driving combination. That car always has, you know, great drivers in it. It's very much Ferrari's favourite child, I think they won't mind me saying. And having said that, the Pirelli car is doing incredibly well on Pirelli tyres. They're doing very, very well to come back. This is the first time Pirelli have really had any real push with a Ferrari in the GT class for a couple of years and at Le Mans, and they're doing very, very well as well. But they've probably got a little bit of a disadvantage if it gets into a position where they're trying to double stint or even triple stint a tyre on GT2. It's always going to be tough with them, and the Michelin will have a slight tyre advantage. But if it does rain, Pirelli will come into their own. They have a fantastic wet weather tyre.
And of course this year we have such a huge quantity of different tyre manufacturers involved. We've got Pirelli, we've got Hankook, Dunlop, Michelin, of course. It's a huge quantity this year, especially in GT2. We've not seen this much variety for many, many years, and it will be interesting to see what happens in the wet, like you say. You know, I think Pirelli, I agree, has a fantastic wet tyre, and as does Dunlop, so it'll be interesting to see who comes through with that.
Yeah, Hankook's an interesting entry. Of course, they've watched what Kumho have been doing over the years, and as we know, Kumho had the LMP2 win here 2 years ago, and it's taken a long time for this next Korean manufacturer to come. I don't know why Kumho haven't come back, but Hankook is, and doing a good job. Let's get down to the pits.
Steph, est-ce que vous pouvez nous expliquer ce que vous faites sur votre casque?
There's Stefan Ortelli, had that very large accident earlier.
Me reposer un peu, je préfère préparer mon casque, comme ça il est prêt. Donc
so I'm just taking a break from driving the car, rebuilding my helmet.
En fait, c'est au cas où il y a vraiment des gros impacts ou des grosses saletés. Ça s'appelle les tear-off. Et j'en mets en général 2, et ça me permet de garder la visière toujours le plus
So,
possible.
for a lot of sunshine, I'm just changing the visor.
Le relais d'avant que vous avez fait, il y a eu un petit souci. Donc est-ce que ça vous procure un peu plus de pression là pour,
a bit of problem earlier on.
Non, pas vraiment de pression. Enfin,
So
la
we
pression,
got
c'est de
a lot
repasser dans le
of
virage.
pressure
J'ai
for
fait
the
une
next.
erreur, voilà, j'ai pris une ligne blanche. Et je pense avoir mis la roue plutôt dans la terre qu'autre chose.
Now we've got to just get on with our program. No more problems, no more mistakes.
Ça t'arrive dans un virage en première, ça t'attaque, ça t'arrive dans un virage en
This is a very
quatrième,
fast race this year.
on s'en sort bien. On est déjà remonté 13e, il reste encore 15 heures de course, donc voilà quoi. On est là, on travaille, il faut rien
spin
lâcher.
off the curbs with 13th now in the category, and
c'est un sprint, et en même temps quand tu fais des erreurs, il te reste toujours le temps de te rattraper.
24-hour race.
C'est quand même de pas faire d'erreurs. Donc là on prépare pour être sûr de bien voir, et pas avoir de soucis, voilà.
If we make mistakes, though, you can still get back, recover from, and fight back because it's such a long race. Well, I mean, I have to say, Liz, Stefan certainly had one of the bigger accidents we've seen this tonight, haven't we?
Well,
we don't know how he got the car back.
Oh, and it's absolutely incredible how far up they've moved already. I mean, they're already up to 9th place, it looks like, from what was quite a substantial accident. I mean, when we first saw it happen, we thought, oh, surely that's going to be either a long hold or maybe they won't even get back. He came back without a wing on the back of the car. You know, the team was so quick to get that car back on circuit. So they've done an incredible job back in the top 10.
I think, I mean, I actually never saw the impact myself. I don't know if you guys ever saw a replay of the actual impact, but I only saw him lose it, dropping the wheel on the grass. And I can only assume that the damage was created by hitting very, very square as he went in the rear, and that way the car can really dissipate the energy all the way down the length, and that means that obviously that allows you to fix basically where it's hit and not worry about damage where it's hit into
suspension. It was a tire ball he backed into, not something more solid.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Which is very lucky, and like Johnny said, if you can hit with the prototype squarely in the back, sometimes you can just get away with it.
Problems for Leo Mansell. He's being wheeled back into the pits. Nigel will know about that, be waiting in there. We'll find out soon what happened. Down to the pits. Welcome back to Eurosport live at Le Mans. We're just creeping up towards the witching hour of midnight. Now this car we haven't seen for a long time, have we, Liz? This is the one that got knocked off by the 009 Aston Martin. It's still in daylight. They've rebuilt the car by the look of it, and Mark Rostan, who got knocked off, is about to go out in it.
Yeah, they had a massive crash, just a bit of a coming together with the 009 car right before pit lane. They were very lucky it happened right before pit lane. And stand by for an interview.
David Richards. David, after 9 hours of races, what can you say?
We've had a mixed time with the 3 cars now, so it's the 007 car's going without any real problems. We had one puncture with that car and seems to be quite strong, no technical problems. The 008 car, we've had a problem with the front left side of the car, and we still have a problem there. But it's not a mechanical problem, it's something to do with the aerodynamics of the car. There's something on the floor. And the 009 car has had a lot of electrical troubles, but still they keep pushing on.
We saw that Audi went in the wall. Do you think it's still possible for you to do a podium?
Oh, we're not looking at that now. We're looking now at it's coming up for midnight now, so there's a long, long way to go yet. And we always said if we get a car in the top 5, we'll be very pleased. We'll have done a good job with the car against the diesels, sure.
Thank you very much, David.
Thank you.
So David Richards on Pro Drive, just confirming what we were told before the race. If they got a top 5 finish, they'd be pleased. They're going to do better than that, I think, Johnny, aren't they? They're 5th now as we go up to midnight. It looks very good as long as that car stays reliable.
I think, yeah, but I mean, David Richards is exactly right. I mean, there's so much of this race left to go, and their biggest problem with this car being such a new car will be reliability, and they've already obviously got an aero issue with probably something to do with the front splitter. Maybe they've knocked a curb or something that's influencing the handling of that car. If they finish in the top 5, I think it'll be fantastic. If they run clean from here to the end, they will be on the podium, there's no doubt. But with all the problems with Audi and Peugeot, they are running very, very strongly at the moment, and they'll just be looking for a real strong, reliable run, especially from the 007 car.
Yeah, but this is the quick car, isn't it? The Muka Charouz's Enger car. This is
you say that, but I actually think the other car, I'd probably put my money on the other car, I have to be honest, with the Davison and Turner. Yeah, the 008 car, because and they were actually in front until they had the problem. So I actually think this is a really, really strong 008 I would go for over the 007, but both of them very, very good, very, very strong driver lineups.
Remember the 007 crew had a year's start. They ran the Lola Coupe all last year with the Aston engine, and they've just moved up a step.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not in any way putting down the drivers in that car, but I just think, you know, people like Darren Turner, fantastic driver, Anthony Davison, very, very, I feel, would make a fantastic sports car driver. Maybe not quite ready for that, but he's one of those drivers, I think, Formula 1 drivers, that's really got his head round how this can work. Very intelligent guy.
Anyway, Johnny, thank you very much for being with us. Jeremy Shaw's here is going to update us on what's been going on while we've been chatting to you, and we look forward to Johnny. If you can't come and see us tomorrow, can you? So.
No, I'm probably going to do some other work, and then maybe I'll be leaving before the end, so that I'll leave Liz to have the pain of watching this race finish.
Thank you very much. I'll phone you and tell you how bad it was.
Thanks for having me. Okay, thanks, Liz.
Thanks a lot, Johnny.
Bye-bye.
So more panic in the pits. So this is the car Patrick Dempsey's riding on in the 81 car. That's
Don Kitch is in the car at the moment.
Yeah.
It looks like are they doing a driver change? Are they just doing something?
Look like they're changing drivers. Don Kitch.
Yeah, it looks like they are changing drivers. That'll be Joe Foster maybe getting back in, because I know Patrick Dempsey's already done a double stint. So we'll wait and see what's happening with them. Pretty solid run for them so far, I think, really. They've just been, you know, not the fastest times ever, but they've definitely had a solid run. no real dramas, and you know, sometimes that can really bring you up the order.
Patrick Dempsey doing a solid job, wasn't he, as you said?
He has.
You know.
He's done a double stint. I know he was very pleased to get his first out of the way, but I know he's done a double stint now, so we're hoping that we can get him up here at some point and tell us what it's been like for his first Le Mans.
Excellent. Well, just while we were talking about that, we saw one of the Peugeots running out of talent down at Mulsanne corner, and just going very, very wide there. Here's the 99 car, the Ferrari F430 of...
And someone who's definitely not running out of talent is Montagny in the Peugeot, who's just done the fastest lap of the race in that car. Wow. It appears.
Yes, it does appear, doesn't it? 3:24.
Well, fastest lap for their car anyway.
Yeah.
3:24.8. Not necessarily the fastest lap of the race, but certainly the fastest for their car. So
good.
It's definitely cooling down. The circuit's getting very quick. We've seen a couple other cars do their fastest lap of the race so far. So it'll be interesting to see what comes about the cooler it gets.
So Neil Janney getting on board the what was the Charouz Lola, it's now the Speedy Sabar car, Hugh Hayden's team. That car just getting ready to go out again. Number 13, of course, lucky in Arabic. Sabar means 7 in Arabic, so they had no problem with taking that number when the ACO said, do you want it or not? Of course, a number that Yves Courage had all his racing career, 13. Hugh Schoenack decided against that. Perhaps he should have kept it after tonight's
you never know, maybe.
And the Ferrari F430 we saw in the pits, the blue one, of course, just to mention, that's JMB Racing's car. Manuel Rodriguez, Ivan Le Bon and Christophe Bouchou. I mean, JMB, in their day, they were one of the top team. They kept winning all the sports prototype races with their Ferrari 330 SPs, all the FI GT Sports Car Championship races, and it suddenly just seemed to disappear. Went back into French racing, and apart from Christophe Bouchou, he's got 2 weekend drivers with him, and that car running way down the field.
But at least they're here, you know. I suppose that's something to say. They've decided to put Bouchou in the car. Originally I heard they were going to put another sort of, you know, gentleman driver in the car, but they've decided to go with Bouchou, which I think is a wise decision. Help give the others a bit of guidance, and such a quick driver in his own right in anything that he gets into. So you know, I wish them luck, and I think it's great that they're here.
Could even bring a smile to his face. Unlikely.
Maybe.
Chris Parsons.
Good evening, Mark.
Yes, glad you could join us, and you've been wandering around the paddock, the pits. What's been going on?
Well, I think the whole thing's settling, the race is settling down, isn't it? Everyone's doing their laps, and the parties in the paddock and the hospitality are going on. Lots of people over there. I went over there while I was off air, and yes, there's a lot going on, but on the circuit they're all settling in and waiting for the next updates.
Yeah, I suppose the next incident is probably as much as anything, isn't it? We'd just like to say a quick hello to Vanessa and all her crew for their hospitality. Famous, of course, throughout America. Vanessa Bulk, who actually her family, and she and her family come from the Nürburgring. They had the St. Georg Hotel at Hoacht, the highest point of the Nürburgring, and we went to a lot of parties there, didn't we, in the old days. And Vanessa then went to America, set up her eponymous catering team, and thanks for that. And also,
thank you very much, Vanessa, for looking after our hungry Eurosport people.
Yeah, and thanks to everyone who's been looking after the Eurosport crew, and just a few thank yous. We had dailysportscar.com on earlier. Thank you for all the help they've been giving us. Don't forget, Eurosport.com is carrying a lot of information on the race. And to everyone at home, hope you're having a good Saturday night. We certainly are. Midnight with Sunday morning now here.
We are.
Yeah, this is it.
Just breached into Sunday.
We're halfway through.
Watching the number 8 car just coming back out of the pits. A normal routine pit stop that was, and very quick indeed. So they're back on circuit. Still pushing, no problems there so far, Mark?
No problems at all. And Genet has got that 1 lap in hand at the moment over Audi's Tom Christensen. He's just completed 147. As Christensen comes over, it'll be 146. And the Peugeot of Montagny, the number 8 car, is 1 minute 32 behind him. But don't discount the Pesca Peugeot of Jean-Christophe Bouillon. That's running a solid 4th place at the moment. It might be a lap down on the factory Audi and the factory Peugeot ahead of it, but it's well placed for anything that might be thrown to it later. Remember, that car also was held up early in the race when they had the collision between the Pescarolo and factory Peugeots, which started to break through the chinks in Peugeot's armour.
And that number 9 car has come in a bit early. Apparently they've only done about 9 laps into their stint, so that is an early stop for them. So we'll be waiting to see what might be going on there. Trying to see if we can see something out the window.
Cameras haven't picked it up yet. They're just looking at the overall
it looks like they're coming. I think that is the Peugeot coming back off the line. Yeah, so not a long stop, but certainly an early one. So we'll wait and see if they're back in again soon.
So like Chris, I was walking through the garages before we came back on air, and I mean, you don't get a lot out of the mechanics at this time. They're all getting some shut eye, spreading their chairs around the garages, and all their it's almost mechanical now. They're just the car's out on the track, they wait for the car to come back in, it's fuel, it might or might not be tyres, it might or might not be a driver change, and then you just go back to sleep and wait for the next round, and you just pray that nothing's going to happen during the hour, particularly the GT cars, during the hour and 5 minutes they're out on the track.
The number 9 car has changed drivers with Brabham now at the wheel.
Oh yeah.
Oh, somebody's off. They've been touched behind.
Yeah, again.
Is that the IMSA car? That is that's the number 76 car, and it's been touched behind and thrown off the circuit, but is moving again.
Yeah.
And let's go down to the pits
Patrick
for a quick
Pilet.
interview.
Mark, you just finished your stint. How was it?
The last one very difficult. A car had a problem with an engine, so it put a lot of oil. And although we have a wiper, it didn't work very well. So in fact, I asked them to stop me a bit earlier because I didn't see. In fact, once I went a bit wide in a corner, it was a bit too dangerous. The first 2 stints were very good. The car is very well balanced, working very well. The only problem was this oil on the windscreen.
The weather is really warm. Is it not too difficult physically?
This run was okay. At night is much easier, for sure. The one I did around 4 or 5 p.m., that was quite hot, yes.
You are leading the race. Is it not too much pressure each time you go out?
Before you go out, you're a bit nervous. Then when you go out, you forget. But before you go out, you know it's nervous because anything can happen. But so far, fingers crossed, so good.
Thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you.
So hearing it there from Marc Genet, a man, of course, who finished his education off in my hometown of Buckingham, and he was at Buckingham University, did his business degrees there, and became a master's at that. So good driver as well as a good businessman now. So certainly knows how to put good deals together, doesn't he? So Marc Genet there saying engine problems. That's a bit worrying, Liz. Oil. We've been using a lot of oil, and
yeah, no, that's not good. And he said there's oil on the circuit actually that's come across his windscreen, and he said it was making that very difficult as well. So not good. And we're looking now at something else that's not going very well, which is the number 008 car with Darren Turner in it. And it looks like they're looking at the floor of this car again, which they've done quite a few times. So there must be some sort of vibration there, something going on, but not good to see that car back in the garage. Definitely not. But it looks like they're putting things back on. Hopefully that car is going to be back out on the track soon. Stay with us here. We're going to go to a quick commercial break. We'll be back with you soon on Eurosport Live.
One, two, three. Jeremy, can you just speak? Just check your mic.
Yep.
Yeah, you're very clear. I don't know why it was a problem for... What's Johnny? Did they change it?
Yeah.
Oh, they changed it. There must have been a mic problem then, because...
I could hear him fine anyway, though.
I could hear him, but Johnny couldn't hear himself, so...
Yeah.
Oh, really?
That's good now.
I think, yeah, it's fine, but it's okay.
You're all right.
There's a lot of ambient.
Well, that's probably because that's turned up.
It was turned up because Johnny's wasn't working.
Is that better? Same. The green one should kill any background noise. I've got none at all.
No, I've got a lot on mine anyway.
Brabham leads Le Mans, just as his brother did in 1993. That's cool.
His brother led it in 92.
Yeah, Jeff won for Peugeot in 1993.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. That was cool.
Has he only just gone out, has he? Because he's just, he's just gone out, hasn't he? Yeah.
Yep. So that's our lead-in, isn't it? That's
right.
That's a shoe-in.
Yeah.
Now we're back on air on Eurosport, and the big news here at the moment is that David Brabham is leading in the number 9 Peugeot. Now this is history almost repeating itself. 1993, his brother Jeff won for Peugeot in their eponymous 903s, and so it's a big moment for him. He's got a 1-lap lead over the Audi of Tom Christensen, last year's winner, showing that car with Dindo Capello and with Alan McNish, and in third place the factory Peugeot of Frank Montagny, who is 2 minutes 21 down on Christensen, and Christensen, as we said, in turn a lap down on him. Manuel Collard continues to lead LMP2 in the Essex Porsche. He's down in 16th place, and looking further down the field, GT1 still the property of Corvette, the factory Corvettes, and GT2 the property of Hey Mello for Risi Competizione Ferrari. So Jeremy Shaw rejoining us after a little break, and what have you seen?
Same as you, Mark, actually. Been standing right behind you. No, it's interesting, isn't it? That stop by David Brabham, certainly a little bit out of sequence. They only did 10 laps on that stint. They've done 12 in the previous 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stints. So he came in a little bit early there. We don't know why that was. We'll try and find out if we can. But he's still got a handy lead over Tom Christensen. At the moment, Christensen is back on the lead lap. He's about 3 minutes behind, but he is on the same lap as David Brabham, though it rarely shows on the actual scoring monitor. Frank Montagny is a lap and a bit back in third place, but still running some super fast lap times. Montagny really, those guys have been absolutely flying, but they've obviously been pretty hard on the car because they've already made a couple of unscheduled pit stops, haven't they, Liz?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely just still changing about a lot, and I think there's still a lot to come from there. It's just going to be down now to them keeping it clean and keeping the pit stops really regular. I think that's what it's going to come down to, because they're all going to be pushing as hard as they can, but it is going to come down to how much time is spent in the pits. Yeah, that's right, and that has certainly been the determining factor so far for the car number 8. And meanwhile, this Audi R15 TDI of Tom Christensen, Dindo Capello, and Alan McNish certainly hasn't been the fastest car here, but they've been running consistently. They've been picking up the pace relative to the Peugeots, I think, as the race has been going along. And as I say, right now they're back on the lead lap. We'll just have to see now over these next few laps whether David Brabham can extend that margin again and maybe put the Audi 1 lap down. I'm sure the Peugeot camp would love to see that Audi 1 complete lap in arrears. I'm sure that Peugeot will be telling David Brabham to be pushing as hard as he can, especially in the night, when conditions are a bit more favourable. They'll be going as hard as they can. In the garage now is the Ferrari of Simonson in the car, the 89 car. That is the Hankook Ferrari, the primary Hankook tyre Ferrari. Definitely problems going on there. I'm not sure what's happening, Mark.
Yep, we saw the car come in early, didn't we? And they wheeled it back into the garage. It looked like they had front end problems. Maybe they've had a collision out on the circuit. We've seen a lot of people going off certainly there. Creation then, we talked about them earlier. We had talked to Vanina Ricks, who Jamie Campbell-Walter is getting this car back on its feet after a long layoff. Mike Jankowski certainly very happy to be back at Le Mans. It's
Roman Iannetto's in the car at the moment, someone who I actually drove with in 2007 in the Noel Del Bello car. He's doing a fantastic job in that car, keeping it really steady, very consistent times, so I'm hoping he's just coming in for a regular stop.
Now Jeremy just mentioned, didn't he, about if they're getting more of the front off this car. Now Jeremy just mentioned about the Audis being slightly slower. The 2 fastest laps of the race so far, both 3:24s, one from Frank Montagny and the other from Nick Manassian, who's in the number 7 Peugeot, which Christian Klein is driving at the moment. So that's been the pace. I mean, it's astonishing pace, only 2 seconds off pole, and you don't really expect that as a race pace, do you? And again, we can't reiterate strongly enough, the ACO will not be happy at this.
It's a long stop, isn't it, by the Farnbacher Hankook Tyres team. That car had been running extremely well in the opening stages of the race. On board here with one of the Peugeots, and boy, it's trying to put a lap once again on one of the Audis, and you can see how little they can see as they're coming, weaving their way through the traffic.
Well, we've got some hot news, Liz. It looks like one of the factory Aston Martins is down to 2 drivers tonight.
Possibly, yeah. I've just heard some news that perhaps Stuart Hall's been excluded. I'm not sure if that comes down to the accident that happened earlier involving the Radical. I don't know the ins and outs of that. You know, Stuart certainly, to me, is a very fine driver and absolutely deserved the opportunity in that car. So I'm not entirely sure what the finer details are of that decision or who has actually made it, but it does appear that that is what has happened.
And that would leave the driving then to Harold Premat and Peter Cox, his teammates. So it'll be the second car in this race that's going to be running with only 2 drivers during the night. As you say, we do need confirmation, but we have heard from Stuart himself that he's been excluded.
And I hope that hasn't been, you know, a finalised decision, because I think that Stuart did a fantastic job in that car regardless of what happened there, and like I say, he had every right to be in it. So I do hope that's not a final decision, and I will have more news for you on that as soon as I figure it out myself.
Well, yeah, I think everybody was surprised there wasn't a penalty handed down earlier on. It was a pretty dodgy move that he made coming into the Ford chicane. I mean, he clearly moved across and punted the LMP2 car off the track. I mean, I'm sure he didn't do it on purpose, no question about that, but it was certainly an error of judgment, it appeared. We didn't really know at the time who was on board that car, did we, Mark? But if he has been excluded... No, it was
Stuart. We knew that at the time, and it's Mark Rostan who he inadvertently knocked off, and it was a huge hit. And Stuart, I think, just didn't realise that the Brooke Laddie car was there, and he was trying to get out of the way of the Audi, and bang. Very, very big accident.
It was indeed.
Brooke Laddie, as we saw, I don't know if they're actually back out on the track now, but certainly it was 4.5 hours before the car was wheeled back into pit lane, having been comprehensively rebuilt.
The 008 Aston Martin had another long stop we saw just a few minutes ago. That car, I believe, is now back into the race. Jos Verstappen now is still only shown as 8 laps down on the leader. I think he lost about 4 laps in that earlier incident, but that car, I believe, is back out on the track.
The Creation being refueled, Roman Ionetta stays on board the car. The driver Liz has just been talking about, she's raced with him, and she's raced for Creation, of course. She's raced for Intersport, won Sebring 12 hours with Intersport, and that car being fettled. It's a work in progress, this. They had to bring the car out of Carolina, not having run it properly this year, bring it to Le Mans. They had the worst possible Wednesday night, the 6 hours of running, dark, wet and horrible, and Vanina, through no fault of her own, put the car off the track at one stage because it was just handling like a pig, and Jamie Campbell-Walter apologised to her for that. But now they do seem to have got into a rhythm, and it's all gradually coming together. So, good for Creation. You'll notice on the car, by the way, they've got Rusk, which is a name probably not familiar to a lot of you. They're beauty products, and the Hawaiian Tropic Girls, not seen at Le Mans this year, but they have been replaced by the Rusk Girls, and I'm assured these are going to be the girls we'll be seeing here on the grid in the future.
Well, being the female driver of the group, I'm not really in a position to comment on that. So I'll leave that to you, boys.
So, any more news yet, Liz?
No, nothing yet.
No.
I'm waiting to hear back, see if I can find some more information about what is going on with the 009 car.
Yeah, I mean, we'll obviously have to wait to confirm it before, for official confirmation from the organiser before we confirm it. It will, if it's happening, come up on our screen eventually, along with all the drive-through penalties. We haven't heard any more, have we, about what happened to the track down at Mulsanne corner. Had a shot of it, Jeremy, earlier, breaking up on the outside, but nothing seems to have happened. There were lumps of concrete there, and
yeah, there were, weren't there? It looked like a big sort of couple of cobblestones missing out of there, which could cause absolute havoc, couldn't it? But we've heard nothing since, we've seen nothing since.
Well, in all fairness, if we compare that to perhaps Sebring, where there's generally, quite often large hunks of concrete coming out, maybe it's not really such a big deal in this expansive 8-mile circuit, just one little spot, whereas, like I say, at Sebring, there's usually quite a few different pieces of circuit coming apart. So maybe they're looking at it that way and saying, well, really, it's not that big a deal. They'll survive the 12 hours of Sebring, they'll survive that.
Yeah, then what's the alternative? You have to red flag the race, repair it, wait for it to cure overnight and start again on Sunday morning.
Get on with it, kids, you know, I think that's where we're at.
The Le Mans Double 12. Here's a car that we didn't expect to still be running, Jet Alliance. They've had all sorts of problems with that car, and it's stopped twice out on the circuit. It's got itself back twice, and it's still back in the running. It's maybe way down the order. It's 47th out of the 49 cars we still have running. Thomas Gruber at the wheel at the moment. So this is Aston Martin still then represented in all three classes. The Drayson car, this car, and of course the Lola Coupes.
Seem to be having a very good look at the lights on that car. I'm not sure if if the drivers perhaps been complaining about the lights. Maybe they aren't as bright as he had expected or hoped for. So I'm not sure if there's an issue there, but they're definitely, they're implying a few things. The hood is coming off, so there's obviously something that needs looking into. We'll wait and see if they're going to actually wheel that car into the garage to be able to use more people on it.
Yeah. So the ACO, of course, may well have told them, you've got to have a look at those. Need some attention. Maybe just be a wiring thing. Jet Alliance, those who don't know, is one of the major aircraft leasing companies in Europe, and FIGT Championship winners. And,
your jet parked there, Marcus?
Yeah, I wish.
Yeah, right.
Plenty behind us, aren't there, out of the Le Mans airfield, but we had to leg it here like everyone else. But so 49 cars of the 55 starters still shown as running on the board. Well, in fact, 3 of the ones at the bottom aren't running at the moment. Marc Rostan, the former French GT champion, who was at the wheel of that Brookladdy Radical that got knocked into the wall. Well, in fact, it wasn't Marc is at the wheel of it now, but it was Tim Greaves who was at the wheel of it, the boss of Radical, and I think Tim is feeling probably pretty sore after that. It was a huge impact.
Yeah, I would have thought so. They've had almost 5 hours in the garage, I think, before that car's gone out. They did wheel it out after about 4.5 hours, got it onto the pit lane, and then wheeled it back in. So obviously when they fired that car up, it wasn't quite with the way they'd hoped it would be running.
In comes the House of Lords car, Paul Drayson's car, and we saw his family earlier, didn't we? His wife and children all in their Aston Martin overalls. Absolutely huge enjoyment from the whole family of this. It's the whole family that goes racing, and we just had Dario Franchitti up, didn't we, a short while ago? Well, here's Dario's brother Marino.
I think it's actually Johnny.
It's Johnny on board at the moment, but I was going to say he's driving his car. We've hardly mentioned Marino tonight, have we? I don't think we've actually seen him driving yet. We haven't had an interview of him, which we were looking forward to.
No,
and in fact, right behind that car on the pit lane is the 007 Aston Martin, the 5th place car. Stefan Mucker is taking over the wheel of that car. Actually, he's been at the wheel. He's done a double stint already. I think he's staying in the car. I didn't see whether they've made a driver change down there or not. There goes, however, the 87 Aston Martin. So we've got 3 different class Aston Martins in 3 different class divisions on the pit road at the same time, most of them for routine reasons. There goes the 007 car.
And it looks like this Aston Martin is about to go off. This car is actually the most winningest team, apparently, in FIA GTs in 2007 and 8. So quite a big deal for them to be here at Le Mans. Obviously quite a different driver lineup to what they had in FIA GT with Carl Wendlinger and Ryan Sharp, but certainly a strong car in its own right.
Now, Jeremy, I'm going to draw your attention to the top 6 cars and their pit stops. Now, we're getting a very interesting situations coming up here. Audi, again, are starting to show they can go that little bit distance further, because
no, they're not going any farther, but they're just making less mistakes.
Making less mistakes.
That boils down to.
The top 6 cars have all made 13 or, in Brabham's case, 14 stops. Christensen only on 11 at the moment.
That's right. I mean, they've been running. They've been running like a train. They haven't been desperately fast, but they have been running very reliably. Tom Christensen's last lap was a 3 minutes 29. That would compare to Franck Montagny, who is chasing him, not making much ground, however. 3 minutes 27.3 for Franck last time around. The gap between those two, around about 2 minutes. Christensen is still on the lead lap with David Bratton. Franck Montagny is not. But that is the gap between those 2 cars in second and third. Meantime, the 4th place car of Jean-Christophe Bouillon, that is the Pescarolo Sport Peugeot, that has just been on to pit lane a lap or 2 ago. Well, last time around, in actual fact. So he's just done his outlap, getting back up to speed. Now showing 2 laps down from the race leader, David Brabham.
Yeah, I mean, Audi again making its luck. I mean, other people have had problems. They've had to make an extra stop to deal with it. In Audi's case, they did have a problem with the nose of the car when McNish was out there, but they were able to do all that during a routine pit stop.
Well, I think they've had a lot of problems with the nose of that car. It seems to be an ongoing issue, and certainly at Le Mans there's a lot of debris on the circuit. I don't anticipate that to get better for them. It's only going to get worse. There's going to become more and more stuff across the circuit, more things for the front end of that car to hoover up. So we'll have to wait and see what's going to happen there.
Yeah, and as we've heard from Frank Bieler and a couple of others here, they're still struggling with the balance of that car, trying to make it comfortable and consistently comfortable for the drivers. We just saw a thumbs up there from the Audi garage, and I think we can expect Tom Christensen onto pit lane in probably another lap or possibly two. The last couple of stints for that car, he's managed to eke out 13 laps on a tank of fuel. He was last in on lap 40. He's now completed lap 152, so I would fancy next time around we will most likely see car number 1, Tom Christensen, onto the pit lane.
Yeah, and I think Peugeot also looking to bring in one of their cars. I don't know which one at the moment. We've had Brabham, Montani all refilled and retanked, sent out again, but even when Christensen makes that stop, he'll still be one less than the bulk of the top 6 of the field.
Christensen is not hanging around. He's doing basically a lap time that's very close to the best time that I believe he's done in that car anyway, which is the best time for the car in the race so far. He's definitely trying to close that gap between Peugeot and himself, and I think he's doing a pretty good job of it at the moment.
Hey, I absolutely agree with you. I think they work very, very hard on that car, the 3 drivers, Christensen, Capello and McNish, of course, the defending race champions here. Christensen, well, no one comes close to matching his record here at Le Mans, do they, Mark Cole?
No, I mean 8 wins, going for a 9th this year, and Jack Eakes earlier saying, you know, he wished all luck to Tom when Tom passed his all-time record of 5. Tom went to 6. Tom then went to 7. When went to 8, and Jackie said if he can make 9 or 10, I should be the first to congratulate him. Very magnanimous, but a great sportsman, Jack Eakes, and helping out with Eurosport France here, as he did last year. So he still loves to come to Le Mans. He wants to be doing something. If he's not going to be a steward here, he wants to be a commentator, and no doubt in future years when he's here in his Blazer, he'll still be doing jobs for somebody. So this is the into the witching hours, as we say, the small hours of the morning creeping on, and it's amazing, Liz, the crowds don't settle down at all. They're still all around the circuit, they're still partying, they're still loving it, and a lot of these people, a lot of our friends who are here, just say, we're not going to go to bed tonight, we will stay up the full 36 hours.
Well, certainly as a driver, this is one of my absolute favourite times to drive at Le Mans. Just when you get into the dark, it's just absolutely fantastic, and all the crowd is still there, and the lights are flashing, and you see the Ferris wheel going, and you really get that sense of what Le Mans 24 Hours is. Now, this is Bruno Senna in the pits. It looks like there might be a problem there. It looks like he's possibly been off, had some impact. There's a fair bit of damage on the left side of that car. We haven't seen what or who he's hit, but definitely it's going into the garage, and I think there's going to be a lot of repairs to that side of the car and to the right side, it looks like, as well.
Yeah, no rear wing on the car, so that's the second.
Oh God, yes, there's no rear wing at all. Now the question is, do they have enough of those? How many did they bring on the lorry? Because that's not something you usually bring lots of with you.
Well, they are based here, of course. They're in the Techno Park.
That's a very good point. So they've probably got loads, but
they've only got to whip down to the Techno Park if they can get through the crowds. But
good news.
let's just put this in perspective. Bruno Senna, very, very quick, but at Spa just 4 weeks ago, an unforced error by Bruno put the car off massively, wrecked the car in the final hour of the race, went off between coming out of Blanchimont. The accident went on all the way up to bus stop, and the car was totally rooted. He's done it again. That's his 3rd race for the team.
I think part of the thing is getting used to this endurance racing. You know, you start to get tired, the stints are very long. You know, the traffic is a big difference for drivers that have come away from another, you know, discipline of racing. They've come into sports car racing, especially at Le Mans. You must get used to the huge differential of speeds, like we've been saying. The traffic is an issue. You're into the night. There's so many different varieties that come into sports car racing that are not an issue in IndyCar, any single-seater series. So, you know, I think sometimes that just catches them out.
Yeah, Tom Christensen then coming in, as you forecast, Liz, well picked up. But just finishing Bruno Senna, of course, single-seater driver, wants to race single-seaters, wanted to be in Formula 1. Mercedes said, look, we can't put you in Formula 1 yet, we can give you a DTM drive, but he said, no, I don't want that. Hugh de Schonack was waiting in the wings, picked him up and said, come to Le Mans with us, but come and do 2 LMS races to get bedded in. Well, it's a hard lesson.
He is, and I think, you know, he's very, very quick. As we've said, we've seen a lot of Formula Car drivers come into sports car racing that are very quick, but sometimes it's the consistency and it's having that little bit of extra patience to say, you know what, I'm going to wait for a minute and just accept that. And I think sometimes they really struggle with being able to set back a minute if they need to.
Routine pit stop there for the number 1 Audi, and it is Alan McNish who will take over from Tom Christensen. A quadruple stint that Tom did aboard that car, 52 laps in total. That's a pretty good mileage, isn't it, for Alan McNish, for Tom Christensen, I should say. And Alan McNish will now go on a fresh set of Michelin tyres.
And we expect to see him do 4 as well.
Alan McNish will be on the hunt for David Brabham, I think. We are possibly going to see the fastest times we've seen out of that Audi, I think. Coming up into these late hours, it's a bit cooler, and Alan will be on a mission.
Well, we're going to do a break. We're going to stay with you all through the night at Le Mans. We will be switching channels from time to time. We'll warn you when that's happening, so just sit back, relax, and enjoy the action. We're back at Le Mans with Eurosport. We're just looking at the RML Lola Coupe. Mike Newton on board, the fastest weekend racer in the world. Tommy Erdos and Chris Dyson, whose father Rob was with us earlier on, and they're having a good steady run tonight. The problems they had at Barcelona and Spa with bad fuel detonating the Mazda AER turbo engines, hopefully behind them now. They've got this far tonight. We're now coming up to 12:30 midnight, and not a bad run, Liz, at all.
No, it hasn't been, and I think they'll be very, very pleased and possibly relieved that it seems, touch wood, that some of these problems that they've been having with the engine detonation mixed with the fuel are behind them now. Well, hopefully they've found an answer to that. Certainly the car's been running for the most part quite smoothly so far. Yeah,
let's hope so. Certainly the engine folks at AER have worked extremely hard on making this fuel work in the engine. It wasn't really a problem with the fuel per se. The problem was the fact that the fuel they were given didn't match the specifications they were told that it was going to have. So that was the problem early in the season for the AER engineers, and why there were various difficulties. But that car, as you say, running nicely there, 4th placing class. In the meantime, it's still the Team Essex car, the Porsche RS Spider car, number 31, Emmanuel Collar, back at the wheel, is back into the lead now of the P2 class, and Sasha Maassen is now a little bit more than 1 lap down in 2nd place in P2.
Yeah, that was a huge fight earlier on, wasn't it? We saw those cars running nose to tail for some hours, and then Maassen got jumped in the pit stop by Collard, and there we are, as we say, quite a big gap now, just over a lap, and Pompidou in 3rd place. But here we are. This is the sole surviving Alphane Corvette, the 73 car, one of last year's factory Corvettes, being Vettel there. And this is the car, of course, that Luc Alphane would prefer. It was not there. Sasha Maassen, we're looking at the other Maassen on board this one. Yeah, very confusing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Xavier Maassen.
Too many different names.
Sasha and Xavier. So good job there all round, and clock ticking away. There's confirmation it's all Corvette at the moment. We've still got the Jet Alliance car in the running, but that's about it. Lamborghini, first retirement to the race. I don't think it ever actually competed 2 consecutive laps the whole week they've been here.
I think GT1 is definitely the class that's not had as much coverage this time around, despite, you know, the fantastic efforts by the Corvettes of both Luc Alphane and Corvette Racing. It's just not as big a class as it has been in other years before. Obviously, GT1 on its way out slowly, very sadly, out of Le Mans Racing, but still pushing on. Now,
this car, 44th place, Alex Playmat. I mean, how could Audi ever imagine they'd be down in the very bottom of the field?
Yeah, lost a couple of hours, didn't they, changing various components, I believe, on that car. Pit stop, regular scheduled pit stop, I believe, for kind of 11, Sohail Oyari taking over from Nicolas Lapierre. We heard from Nicolas a little earlier this evening. Really talented young guy, and he's just handed the car over to Sohail Oyari. It looks like a scheduled stop. I think they just about held on to 7th place overall, 2nd in the petrol engine division, if you like, the sort of subdivision of the LMP1 class. They are, technically speaking, in the same class, but I think practically there's a different class between the diesels and the petrol engine cars. But the 007 Lola Aston Martin, Stefan Muka at the wheel in 5th place overall, and in 7th place overall, a couple of laps back, that number 11 Courage Orica with the AIM engine, a development of the Judd V10. And then just one place farther back, in fact only about 30 seconds back up the road, is Christophe Tasso in the Pescarolo Judd as well.
So 41 laps down that number 3 car. Alex Premat rejoining. You saw how carefully while they were refueling, the mechanics were just checking all the radiators, pulling any rubbish out of there. This has been the Achilles heel of this car, hasn't it, this year? This
and I think
big wide open maw at the front of the car.
I mean, I think, to be honest, at this point in the race, that's an issue for any of the race cars. I mean, it was certainly an issue for any of the cars I've driven, because now you start to get so much pickup on the circuit. There's so much rubber laid down. There's just debris everywhere on the circuit, and you have to be really careful that the rad screens are cleaned and checked at almost every pit stop, just to make sure that they're, you know, not overheating the car. But certainly in this car, as we've said many times, it is basically built a bit like a Hoover in the front end, so it's more of an issue for them, I'm sure, than any of the other cars, which have a very, very different design in front.
So remember, there's only one of the factory Audis effectively in the running now, and that's this car, the number 1 car. But it has got behind it in 6th place still the Collis Audi, the R10 of Andre Lotterer, and just a couple of places back Christian Albers and the other one. Andre Lotterer, of course, brought in very, very late. He was only invited to come back in on last Sunday because he's bringing a pile of money from Germany, and Andy Merrick had to step down, make way for him. No one yet knows how much Andre Lotterer bought, but a lot of drivers are interested to know how much they could buy this drive for.
I heard, and it was a lot. So I don't feel like I should be saying it on live on Eurosport, but it was a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, someone's got to pay for it, and someone's got to find the sponsorship.
Exactly.
And Andre Lotterer is a very, very well qualified driver, isn't he? There's no question about that. He's won in just about everything he's ever driven.
Good on him. If he got the drive, absolutely good on him. I'm not knocking
him. Boy, has he stepped up to the plate as well. I mean, he has been fast since the very beginning.
Absolutely. And they're running in 6th place, you know, let's not knock them. They've been consistent. We've not had much to say because they've not really done anything wrong.
And just the two drivers, remember now.
Exactly. That's gonna get really hard by the time the morning rolls.
They still bought Andy Merrick as reserve driver. Don't you think they must be wishing now they'd just put him in the car for 10 laps just to get used to it?
One day, absolutely gutted. That's what they would want to be doing, because you know, I remember being very tired anyway on the Sunday morning with 3 drivers, you know, and we were all splitting it evenly, but certainly with 2, I mean, they're going to be absolutely wasted by the time they get towards the end of this race.
Yeah, they got a lot of work. There is the Matmut car, the Courage Orica car, undergoing repairs in the garage once again. It's slipping down the order now, back outside the top 15. Bruno Senna still waiting patiently at the wheel of that car, and here's the stop for the Team Go, Navy Team Go car. That is the class leader in LMP2. Emmanuel Collard out of the car, and I believe that will be Sasha Masson.
Sasha Masson, oh, it's going into the garage.
Sasha getting out of the car, okay.
This is something we've never seen at Le Mans, a Porsche Spider being garaged.
Well,
last year they both ran faultlessly apart from one puncture, which is what decided the outcome between the Essex and Bang Merkstein cars.
Well, certainly they are keeping the driver in the car. He was belting him in, so conceivably this is not going to be very long, and possibly they just want to take the front off and make it as quick as possible, but we'll wait to see what the result is of that.
Funnily enough, having said that, Liz, Bruno Senna is still sitting belted in his car, and that's going to be a long job.
Well, I am wondering if perhaps they've asked him to. They might need him to be doing something inside of the car. That's the only thing I can think of, because certainly, you know, when you have a massive accident like that, the first thing you do is get out, because it's going to be a long wait. You might as well go and hang out and hope they can fix it. But it might be they need him to do something, you know, on the actual inside of the car, or something with the brake pedal. You never know.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing is that this time of night we don't have full live coverage of the whole of the circuit, and so wherever Bruno went off, we didn't see. And that number 10 car crashed earlier by Stefan Ortelli, so if it wasn't for bad luck, this one would be having no luck at all.
Yeah. And another car that's had some incidents tonight is Frank Montagny in the number 8 Peugeot. He's running in 3rd place, and after that driver change in the number 1 machine of the Audi R15 TDI, Tom Christensen handing over to Alan McNish. There's now only 26 seconds between the second and third place cars. They're both a lap down to David Bradman in the lead in car number 9. And last time around, Frank Montagny turns another stunning lap, 3 minutes 25.48. He took 5 seconds off Alan McNish.
Yeah, and it's possible that Alan's just hit a bit of traffic there on that lap, but at this point in the time, you know, every single second counts, so he's just going to have to find his way through the traffic a bit quicker, I think.
That's right, and of course Alan has just got in that car, only 2 or 3 laps to go, so he's just getting himself up to speed. They've made some changes to the car since he last got in it many hours ago, and so I'm sure the balance is probably a little bit different, so he'll be making sure he doesn't make any silly mistakes while he gets himself up to speed.
Yeah, it looks like they're taking the nose box off the Japanese Porsche there. They're starting to pull everything off. The driver's still inside, as you said, but
yeah, they're still a good. They've still got. They had about a 3-lap margin or 4-lap margin over the number 33 car that is currently third place in LMP2. That is the Judd V8 engine Lola of the Speedy Racing team, Seva Automotive, and it's Benjamin Leuenberger, Xavier Pompidou, and Johnny Kane, who've been sharing the driver duties there. And it's currently Xavier Pompidou at the wheel, another very experienced French driver.
Absolutely, and he drove with his team last year, I believe, in a prototype car as well. So he's definitely well up to the job. A very experienced GT and prototype driver. And certainly they will be really happy about what's going on right now with both those cars in front of them, because it was Bruno Senna in front and Sasha Massen, of course, both of which are in the pit lane at the moment, and also the other Oreca car. So certainly this could play into their hands, and they'll be telling him down the radio to push hard and keep trying to make up those extra laps and see if they can take advantage of the fall of the other cars.
Well, this is a mirror, isn't it, what happened out here in P1? It's now happening in P2. All the favourite runners are meeting problems, and well, here's the Oreca Judd. Number 12, Signature Plus, this car.
Brock Mayweather, the Signature Plus team.
Yeah.
And
it's the Oreca Courage, it's Oreca built Courage, of course. That's why they call it the Oreca Judd on your screen. But Signature Plus, this is Philippe Signo's team. He's been running in European Formula 3 for some years and made the big jump into sports car racing this year. I think they're all thoroughly enjoying themselves.
Not too bad a run for them there. They are currently running in 14th place, I believe, which is not bad in this field at the moment.
Yep.
So, I mean,
first time out for them.
Yeah, and with the way things are going, they could continue to move up.
Yes, they could, certainly. In the meantime, also moving up is Frank Montagny. He's taken another 5 or 6 seconds out of Alan McNish. Another 3 minutes 26.2 last time around for the Frenchman in the Peugeot against Alan McNish's 3:32. So is she having a hard time really getting up to speed? It would appear since rejoining the race just, when did he make his pit stop? On lap 153. So he's completed 3 laps now since he took over from Tom Christensen. But during that time, the gap has come down by about 12 seconds.
Right, we've just had confirmation from the organisation. Stuart Hall has been excluded, and they've told him you may not appeal against this exclusion. So they're obviously taking it very, very seriously.
Now, that's something I've not ever seen happen here. I'm sure it has before, but I've never seen it. And I'm surprised by that, actually. I didn't expect that to be something that they would do so hastily. I would have thought that maybe a very big penalty, sort of a long hold for a few minutes, perhaps.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have expected that, would you, Jeremy?
No, I absolutely agree with you there, Liz. I think there's some certain amount of inconsistency there. I think it wasn't as if it was a blatant move. It was just a very small error of judgment. I mean, he just about left a car's width to the side of the road there, and I'm sure he didn't mean to make contact with the LMP2 car, and he was under intense pressure from behind from one of the Audis. So I think it was certainly a mistake, I would say, by Stuart Hall, but I don't think it's worthy of being thrown out of the race. It wasn't
it's a huge punishment.
I mean, it is massive, and I mean, we've all made mistakes in racing. Clip the side of a car that you misjudged your distance from, and granted it was a big mistake and it looked awful on TV, but Stuart is a talented driver in his own right, and I think it's a very harsh decision. I'm really surprised by that.
So Frank Montagny then in the number 8 car then, he has just been refettled. That's a 3rd place car. He goes out, that takes him up to 14 pit stops, the same as David Bradman, our race leader. Alan McNish is in the number 1 Audi, only 12 stops for that car. So we'll watch at that point with interest. So we're going to take a break. Mark Coley's Halliday, Jeremy Shaw here live at Le Mans, and we'll be back with all the news after these messages.
Welcome back to Eurosport's coverage of the Le Mans 24-hour race. And there is a pit stop for the class-leading GT2 class-leading Risi Competizione Ferrari F430. Has been Jaime Mello at the wheel for a good long period of time, and there is I think there was a driver change going on down there. They've certainly got the fuel in now. They have elected not, I believe, to change the tyres, and that car will be back underway very, very shortly. Currently holds a one lap advantage over the number 92 Ferrari F430. There goes the 82 Risi car. They had a stop and go penalty earlier on in the evening, didn't they? But since then they've been running absolutely beautifully, and in second place is the JMW Automotive Motorsport car. That is the Dunlop shot car of Rob Bell, Tim Sugden and Andrew Kirkcuddy. And they had a very sort of low-key beginning to the week. They weren't particularly quick in either practice or qualifying, surprisingly so, considering the amount of success they had last year. But now they're beginning to come into their own, Liz.
And it's been really interesting. We've seen this whole leaderboard change a lot in the GT2 class. We saw Porsche leading earlier. Now it's back to Ferrari and Porsche. And of course, Jaime Mello knows what it's like to be in front, and they will want to reclaim their title that they gained last year at Le Mans. So this is exactly where they want to be, and I'm guessing they're going to be doing their best to take as far a lead in front of the next Ferrari in line as they can.
David Brabham rejoins pit stop number 15 for our leader against the 12 of the number 1 Audi, which is leading by 1 lap at the moment. So 3 laps, 3 pit stops more than the Audi, and it's still difficult to work this out. There's still a lap ahead, but they've made 3 more stops.
Yeah, and McNish, he's not even halfway through a stint, so they're on completely different strategies right now as a result of a multitude of factors, really. But they're still running very, very strongly. David Brabham has been pretty consistent, hasn't turned any stunningly fast laps, but you don't need to do that when you lead in a motor race. You just need to make sure you don't make any silly mistakes, which is what has afflicted most of the rest of the LMP1 field, it would appear.
Yeah, and he's a good lap ahead as well of Alan McNish. Alan McNish, like we've said, has not been doing any incredibly amazing lap times as we had maybe expected. And also, Frank Montagnier seems to have slowed down a bit now. So, that might be saving Alan a minute, because we did see that, we thought he was hunting him down for a minute there.
Well, he was, but he just made a pit stop. He just came in and made a pit stop. So
but that's going to affect it, is
absolutely,
you're
absolutely right, Liz, because he closed that gap down to 20 seconds. That was the good news.
Yeah.
The bad news is he then needed the pit stop.
Yeah, exactly.
So the gap is now out to 1 minute 14 seconds as Frank come past to complete that out lap.
Which is very good news for Audi, and they will be very happy about that. Now, the big question is, when is Alan McNish due to pit? He can't be that far off, really. He's been in for a while now.
Jeremy reckoned he's only halfway through his shift.
Really?
Yeah, he came in on lap 153, so he's only 5 laps into that stint, so he's got another 7 or even 8 laps to go.
Yeah,
so now's his chance to push hard and do his best to get a bit of a gap away from the Peugeot and get that much closer to David Brabham.
This could just be the break they've been looking for. A window's open for him, hasn't it?
Exactly.
No one in the pits at the moment apart from Bruno Senna, who's in the garage still. That car being worked on. He's out of the car, as you can see now. There's no point just staying sitting in there strapped in, because that car was being totally disassembled. Whether or not Hugh de Schoenack will let the car go out again, I don't know. It's been fairly battered tonight.
Yeah, it has. I mean, we're just going to have to wait and see what sort of repairs they need to do on that. And obviously, it is Le Mans, and they will do everything they can to get the car back out again. And we have seen worse damage than that get repaired and returned to the circuit. So it's all going to come down to what exactly has been damaged and how much.
The other car that's still in the garages is that little Brooklandy Radical. Mark Rostam was due to take it out, the one that Tim Greaves was driving when it got knocked off by Stuart Hall. And I have to say that if you're just joining us, we're still all fairly shocked that Stuart Hall, who's the most personable 24-year-old young driver, he finished 4th with Martin Short here in 2007, drove the Creation with Johnny Molam last year, has always been exemplary at Le Mans, but in 27 years of going to Le Mans, I've never ever come across a driver being excluded.
Nor have I, and I feel personally that was an extremely harsh decision. I'm still really shocked by it, as you've said. I think we all are. And certainly he's not a rookie driver that was driving dangerously or anything. It was a mistake. Fair enough, it was a big mistake, but still, I still feel it was an extremely harsh decision. I'm very surprised by it.
So Jos the Boss brings in the Lola Aston Martin, and of course Jos winner in LMP2 last year, driving the Van Merkstein car. That was a great result for the Dutch Porsche Spider, wasn't it? And after a race-long battle of Essex, and was, as we said earlier, decided only when the Essex car had a puncture. That was the difference between the two cars finishing. So this car, Jos, is in 12th place at the moment. This is one of the ones that's had problems as well. And he is 8 laps down on leader David Brabham. But he's in the running.
Yeah, and he's back out into the fray. Also back out into the fray is that Navy team Go. Quite 4 laps behind the number 31 Team Essex Porsche RS Spider with Emmanuel Collard up.
And not far behind him is that number 3 Lola with Xavier Pompidou at the wheel, and he's going to be pushing hard. It's only 1 lap down from them, so not a lot of breathing room there for RS. So he's going to need to keep it clean, keep it fast, because any mistake and it's going to be taken over by Pompidou.
Yeah, and Pompey, of course, just made the most of while he was in the pits. Johnny Kane, if he gets his hands on this car again in the near future, I think you'll find he might even be able to hunt down Sergi Ara, or whoever takes that car over. But Ara, of course, an outright Le Mans winner in his own right.
Yeah, that's a very fast car. I mean, the competition in the LMP2 cars haven't come within 3 or 4 seconds all weekend of those 2 Porsche RS Spiders, and I've been really surprised by the margin they've had. I'm sure you are too, Mark. I mean, we know it's a quick car. Those cars ran away and hid here last year, but I'm not even sure the gap then was as much as it seems to be this year.
No, absolutely.
They did change the aerodynamic rates on those 2 cars for this year, didn't they?
Yes.
It wasn't just the opposition.
Pescarolo in the garage now. They've made a driver's change.
Tanso out.
Back on the floor, yes. Tanso going out. Looks all fairly normal from here. Yep, fairly normal pit stop, driver change. Good to see them running all right now.
Yeah, and again, don't discount cars like this, because Pescarolas are always there, somewhere in the running, and suddenly they pop up on the podium when you least expect it at these races, and so don't discount that car despite the problems it had earlier.
Now another car that's working its way back up is the number 7 car. The number 7 Peugeot has really pushed its way back up. It's currently running in 10th place, which has come on a long way from their previous problems that they had in this race. They had a lot of problems early on. That's an incredible job to have gotten that far up, Jeremy.
Yeah, isn't it just? I mean, they were down in the 50-odd positions after that early mishap, and they've absolutely just thrown caution to the wind, have those 3 drivers in the car number 7, and that's Nicola Miniasio, Pedro Lamy, and Christian Klein, who's at the wheel right now. We heard Christian a little while ago here in the booth, and he's a great young guy. He's got a great attitude. He knows he should have had, well, he believes he should have had a better opportunity in Formula 1, but he's just taking the opportunities available to him now in the sports car scene and grabbing it with both hands. He's turned some very fast laps. It's been, I think, certainly with Nick Minassian that set the fastest times in that car, but all those 3 drivers are very evenly matched.
And certainly at the moment, Christian Klein is turning, well, basically one of the very fastest times, the fastest time on his last lap, in fact, on the circuit, I think. So he's certainly pushing hard. I think that's a very good reason why they're actually back into 10th place, is that they've been told to push hard as they can, and it's actually paying off.
Jean de Portales then just taking out the KSM Lola Mazda. We saw that going to the picture. That car's also had its share of problems. Jean crashed it heavily in practice and brought out the red flag for a while, but the 39 car currently in 45th place, so that's out of the running too, as Christian Klein comes in the number 1 Peugeot.
Number 7.
Sorry.
It does look like a normal pit stop for them. Looks like they're hopefully put all the problems of the earlier race behind them. Straight back out again. Yep, very quick pit stop by them. Just fuel. And he's off and running again.
Yeah, and Christian, of course, interestingly, teammate of those 2 actually fighting each other tonight rather than being in the same team.
Bit of a Formula 1 fight going on.
Ah, yeah, we like it, don't we? Nigel Mansell, we heard from earlier, still says this is one race he wants to do, and Dario, of course, Simon Hill managed to get Dario to actually say, yes, I do want to come here.
Well, yeah, I mean, Dario he's the arch enthusiast, isn't he? I mean, that whole family, George and his father before him, and Marina, of course, Dario's younger brother. I mean, they are true students of the sport. They love every aspect of it. If there's anything to do with motor racing that's within earshot or driving distance or flying distance for Dario Franchitti, he will be there.
And I was standing behind their garage earlier, and I was talking to George, his father George and Dario, and Patrick Dempsey walks by, and there's this host of photographers and film crews really fawning and falling over them, all French crews I have to add, and they walk past Dario, and I'm thinking to myself, I wonder if they even know who Dario is. He's like Indy 500 winner and IndyCar champion, and this is probably one of the most famous guys in motorsport, but they don't even know what they're looking at.
Well, Dario's no stranger to the paparazzi either. Of course, his wife Ashley Judd, she's followed around wherever she goes as well. Unfortunately, Ashley's not here, most likely because of that reason, actually.
Yeah, probably. I think you're probably right. And perhaps it's just they're just not noticing who Dario actually is. I think if they knew, if it was pointed out, I do think he'd have quite a following on his hands.
Yeah, with his new disguise this year. He's disguised with a long haircut.
Yeah,
disguising himself as John Hindhaugh. We've decided.
He said he wanted to look like Jeremy Shaw, is what he told me. But
fastest sector time there for Andre Lotterer, who's at the wheel currently of the Team Kohler's number 14 Audi R10 TDI. 6th place overall, only 4 laps down from the race leading Peugeot of David Brabham.
And just looking further right down the order, LMGT2, Pierre Caffer then, the man who had to take that penalty earlier on for corner cutting. He is the leader of the pack, and that pack is getting a little bit spread out now. He's got a lap over the 92 car. That's the 92.
Now the man who's just really...
Yeah, I think it's just that's the JMW car, which I think that gap, as a result of that last pit stop by the Risi team, where they handed over to Pierre Caffer after a marathon stint, I believe it was, by Jaime Mello. That gap, I think, is just slightly less than 1 lap now. I think we're going to see the 92 car coming past here fairly shortly.
Yeah, I suspect Rob Bell's on board that car now, because he has made up quite a lot of time, and he's been considerably faster in the last few laps. As Pierre, he's 5 seconds a lap faster than Pierre Caffer. Patrick Pilet 3rd for Porsche, so Porsche still not out of the fight, although Ferrari are 1, 2 and 4 in the category. It has been so entertaining.
Yeah, there goes the number 92 car. Unfortunately, the score doesn't show who's at the wheel of that car.
Yeah.
The gap from 1st to 2nd in GT2 now, still 2 minutes and 46 seconds.
Yeah, they're both on the lead lap, showing the lead lap, yeah.
And as you said, Mark, last time around the gap, the faster lap turned by the number 92 car, then this time another 3 seconds dragged out of that deficit to the number 82 machine.
Well, we know it's not Tim Sugden, because he was driving the car until about half an hour ago, so my guess it would be Rob Bell. He's a bit quicker than Andrew Caccaldi, but I'm not going to knock Andrew down
much, is he?
No.
Now, incidentally, the man that's just thrown down the time and is definitely kicking it on a bit more is Alan McNish. He's just done a fastest sector time in the last sector and done a 3:28, which is one of the fastest lap times on the circuit at the moment. So he's obviously come into his own. He's feeling good, and he's definitely putting on the push to David Brabham, who's answered quite nicely with a lap time of almost equal speed. So definitely speeding up out here now.
Yeah, well spotted, Liz. And at the same time, McNish now is beginning to take a little bit of time out of Frank Montagny. That gap just expanded just a little bit over the last 3 or 4 laps. Montagny, of course, he's on a full tank of fuel, and McNish now getting towards the end of his tank, so the Peugeot's a good bit heavier, hence perhaps one of the explanations, certainly, for the slower lap time for Frank Montagny. But again, I think the point is that there really isn't a whole heck of a lot to choose between those 2 cars right now.
And the Audi in trouble is finally looking like it's about to head back out onto the circuit. That is the number 3 car. They've had a horrendous race. So many problems, left, right and centre, in and out of the garage. And it looks like they've just put the back of the car back on, and he's maybe about to go back out and try again.
Yeah, he's just sliding down all the time. He was 44th when he came into the pits. I guess he's going to drop... he's not going to drop down to 45th, because that's the Matthew Marsh Lola. That car is 9 laps behind him at the moment, but this has become nothing more than a test run now. They'll just run Alex and the other guys and just get all the data they can on this car and just keep going, piling on the data. They may go to Petit Le Mans this year, it's not yet confirmed. Otherwise, this is all data for Le Mans next year, and it'll all be stored, all be used.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously Audi will continue to keep running and keep pushing and try and learn as much as they can from this, as long as the car is still able to run. But you can definitely see that slightly disheartened
Huge trail of fluid as they went out to the garage.
I noticed as it left the pit stall there seemed to be a little bit of a wisp of smoke out of the back of it. I don't know whether it was just some fluids left on the track or whether it did indeed come out of that car.
Well, if a following car goes off, we'll know it is dropping fluids.
There's definitely something coming out of it. Absolutely.
Oh dear.
Yes.
That's not good.
Hopefully nothing worse than an overfill, but it's not helpful to people following, is it, Liz?
No, it's definitely not. Especially in the night at this time, it's not a good thing. It's not what you want to find on the circuit, and especially if it is fluid that we've seen. It's the last thing you need to be dumped on the circuit in the dark, because you're just not going to be able to differentiate between that. Another car may go straight through it and go off the circuit.
So we'll watch that space, see what. Be good to have another look at him leaving the garage, because like Jeremy said, I thought I saw a trail of fluid as he went out. But the crew didn't seem too bothered, did they? So.
Fourth place car onto pit lane, Jean-Christophe Bouillon. He's been at the wheel now for quite some time. He took over on lap 123. That car has now completed 161 laps. So another 12 lap stint there for JCB. 1, 2, 3, 4 quadruple stint for the Frenchman. Fancy he's going to be relieved at the wheel before that car returns.
And this car, of course, the one that had that accident earlier on in the pit lane with the number 7 Peugeot, and both of those cars have moved up now, both within the top 10, so they've done a great job to kick on. But obviously I'm sure the teams are thinking, where would we be if we hadn't had that mishap?
Even so, there's a lot of people out here tonight who would love to see this car win. I mean, Henri, you cannot underestimate how popular Henri Pescarolo is at Le Mans. Not just with the French, but British love him too. I mean, to them, he's still the whole spirit of Le Mans. He's the guy they just really want to see win in his own car.
He's the spirit of privateer Le Mans. I think that's a big thing, and I would love to see him win as well. I think he's worked so hard, and he loves Le Mans. He's always put absolutely everything into it, and especially with Pescarolo, perhaps changing over soon, moving on, it sounds like. So I'd love to see him have a final hurrah and say, look, we've won Le Mans. I think that would be brilliant.
Also around the world, endurance flying champion. He set all sorts of records on long distance flights in his twin-engined aircraft, 4-engined aircraft. A very, very talented pilot. And of course a multiple Le Mans winner in the Matra days, which is why he's carried those colours through, the greens and blues.
Yeah, those famous colours, as you say, of Matra Simca. And it is Simon Pagenaud who's taken over the wheel of car number 17. Still shown in 4th place. I think still just 2 laps down to the overall leader.
Yeah, I wondered when you spot that. His man. You're a big Simon fan, aren't you?
Yeah, the guys.
ALMS.
It's amazing. I mean, he had a pretty good career in Europe, in France. Of course, he started off right here at the Winfield School. The FFSA school right here in Le Mans. He had a successful time in Formula Renault, in World Series, and then figured his career really wasn't going very far over here. Thought he'd look for new opportunities in North America. Went over there, got into the Atlantic Championship, won that championship, won a $2 million prize to take him into the Champ Car World Series. Had a pretty impressive year with Team Australia and Derek Walker's team. Derek Walker, another expat Brit, and he's parlayed that into a ride with Gilles de Ferran's factory Acura team over there in the American Le Mans Series, and right from the start he was a star in that series.
Yeah, and we all noticed that. Very, very, very good.
Really nice guy too.
Am I right in what I've just seen? Is Bruno Senna back on the circuit?
Have you?
Does appear to look like he's running again. Certainly not showing the pit garage sign, and if that is the case, that'd be phenomenal.
No, he's on track. Yep, he's out of the pit.
That is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, he's on his out lap at the moment, so well spotted, Liz.
I think we have to give that team some serious credit, because that car was in bits to the point where the entire floor of the car was off. Everything was off of it. It was just a mere shell of a vehicle, and it's back on circuit already. So that is full credit to the Orica team. For the second time. So big credit to the Orica team, and they're just loving the fact that their shop is down the road.
Yeah, and we haven't even got to halfway distance yet. So.
Should be a good stop. I mean, they've done all that work before already this evening. The second time around it goes even better, I guess.
Yeah, it was probably a bit quicker, wasn't it? They were like, boys, the same thing again. Crack on,
So we've just gone past 1 o'clock at night. 3 o'clock in the morning will be the halfway distance this race. If you're just joining us, it started 3 o'clock this afternoon, but we got a long way to go. 13 hours of hard racing. How many cars are going to be left? We've lost a lot already. 55 started. At the moment, we've only got 48 cars on the circuit, and the rest appear to have retired as we watch the 007 Aston Martin coming in. This has always been the lead car, always been the strong team, although Jeremy will disagree with me on that, and he thinks the others are a bit quicker, but we're not going to fall out over that. Jeremy is leaving us for a while. Neville Hay, the voice of Le Mans for many, many years, coming to join us. And Neville, good evening.
Good evening. I think you're going to say the voice of the night.
Voice of the night. Are you leaving us as well, Liz? Yep, Liz too.
Yep, see you later.
Yeah, we'll all catch up in the morning.
One word from me and the most attractive member of the team walks out.
No, I'm not going.
It's definitely not to do with you. Yeah, Mark's still here, don't worry.
Oh dear. Right, well, this has turned out to be quite an interesting battle, hasn't it?
Yeah, give us an overview of how you've seen it, Neville. That's the best way to start.
Well, I think that looking at the start, there was drama at a time we didn't really expect it. I think we thought that it would probably settle down to the Peugeots definitely being quicker. I don't think there was much doubt in anybody's mind about that after what happened during the course of practice, both wet and dry. But I don't think we thought we were going to have quite so much ill luck as far as first the Peugeots were concerned, because we thought, well, that's fixed that, hasn't it? And then almost immediately afterwards, things started to go just as wrong as the evening wore on for the Audis. Now, I happen to believe, rightly or wrongly, that Audi did make a terrible mistake. Now, I know that when they've debuted cars before, they've come straight in, they've been successful, fine, thank you very much, good afternoon. But this was a totally different form of aerodynamics. They were using air through the car. I don't think, frankly, they prepared perhaps as earnestly as they should have done for this race.
Right, well, Neville, Janus Wimpfen's just joined us, a sports car historian, author of Time in Two Seats, more books on top of that, and I love him because he's included me in some of his books. Janus, you're at Sebring this year. Why didn't this problem happen at Sebring?
I think it was to some degree a bit of chance that it didn't occur at Sebring. I think it's the fact that it didn't occur there. If something doesn't occur there doesn't mean that you're home free and it's not going to happen at Le Mans. You have to find that out along the way by extended testing, by running in some of the other races, whether they be in the US or in Europe. And that's, I think, really where Audi missed out, is not having that opportunity. And I think it is not having the opportunity. That was apparently a board choice, not Dr. Ulrich's choice, not to run in the other races.
Well, Janus just having joined us, we're going to a commercial break. We'll come back and we'll continue this thread. So stay with us here live on Eurosport from Le Mans. You're back in the small hours at Le Mans with Eurosport. We're live on air. This is Mark Cole with Neville Hay and historian Janus Wimpfen, who's here to tell us some of his impressions on the race. Janus, let's start with you because Neville and I both been here telling what's been going on. What's been your overview of the race so far?
I think there are two basic elements that I've noticed. One is that it's seemed to shift kind of episodically between a period when you've got all these cases of attrition, people either completely dropping out or falling back, as has the number 3 Audi, and that's certainly been an effect. At other times, as we're going through right now, a period where pace is really important. You want to stay on a particular pace, maybe begin to chase the car in front of you if you can. So it's kind of shifted between one and the other. I think the other factor that's a very subtle one that doesn't affect so much the top runners, but certainly has been an effect in GT2, and that is that because of the new rules having to do with air conditioning, and as a result of that, now the driver's shifts have gone longer. You can drive as long as 4 hours. We've seen cases where some of the top drivers have been triple, quadruple stinting, particularly early on in the race. And that's had a subtle difference in the way some of the pace has gone on in GT2 that we haven't seen. It's almost like it goes back to the old days of the 2-driver shifts where somebody would drive these marathon long stints and then be relieved by the other driver. Here we're seeing a case where in some of the GT2 cars, they've left the 3rd driver off of the gentleman driver to only drive a minimal period of time, and the 2 professionals will then drive long stints. So it's really upped the up the ante, as it were, in the GT2 class particularly. That's
but what a fight tonight we had, haven't we?
Yes,
I mean,
we
it's been extraordinary. We've just been loving that. And hey, just as we're talking, out goes the number 1 Audi race leader, Alan McNear. A no problem shift. He's going to try and do what Tom Christensen did before him, do 4 stints on the same set of tyres. This is the end of his first stint on them, and he's running well at the moment. 3:27s is what he did earlier in the day, but his last fast lap was a 3:32, so he's not that far off the pace of Brabham on his 3:30. He goes back, slots in, still ahead of Frank Montagny in the number 8 Peugeot, so he keeps the second place there at the moment. Yanis, wearing your other hat then, you're here for Daily Sports Car this weekend, and again our thanks to dsc.com for all the help they've been giving us, particularly the previews, which I'm sure you had a hand in, and we've obviously been following your coverage all around the world as well, including Spa, where we had a few problems with at the end of the race, I understand. But no, we loved your overview of Spa. I mean, you really loved that race, didn't you?
I did, and it's always an exciting race. Anything at Spa is dramatic. There's something about the circuit. I think from a historical point of view, what I enjoy about the circuit is that, unlike the Neue Nürburgring, which doesn't quite follow the character of the Nordschleife, the new Spa circuit certainly has many of the elements of the old one, hasn't sacrificed much from the old one, so one can always expect dramatic races at Spa.
Right, you made your name globally in the bookshops as the author of Time in Two Seats, and then the follow-up book volumes to that, but your latest one is completely different.
Well, now I'm finishing up a book on the history of Elva, the Elva mark, famed British mark of 1950s through the mid-60s, which of course was the precursor to the McLaren mark, so it actually sort of drifts into the early McLarens as well, and it's got certainly quite a story of a very quirky, quintessential British mark in that regard, and follows its ups and downs. It was never as successful commercially as, say, Lola or Lotus or some of the others of that era, but it was very important, and it had made an impact, and I'm proud to say that none other than Sir Sterling Moss has written the foreword for the book, which I'm very happy for, because he never really drove Elvas during that era. He was just a great fan of the car.
Yeah. Neville, Elva.
She goes.
Yeah.
Frank Nichols, my first memory of Elvas was Shelsley Walsh, where a man called John Terry had a 1600cc BMW engine in the back of an Elva. And this car was unbeatable in its class, and he was the first person, to my knowledge, to make use of BMW's power unit in the back of a sports racing car at that time. They did, of course, as we are going to learn from the book, go on to build a lot of sports cars. There was one absolutely beautiful little coupe. I think they made 2 of them that were absolutely superb, absolute dream to look at. But I suppose that really, to me, I was sad when Elva did their deal, if you like, to become almost what you describe as the production manufacturing arm of McLaren. And after that, it seemingly lost its way.
Yes.
Which to me was very sad, because at the time that they were making cars and they were appearing, my old friend Tony Lanfranchi, sadly no longer with us, was one of the great Elva drivers, and Tony told it as it was. It was all straight and full and what have you. Returning, if we might, for a moment or two to this, I totally agree with you about this question of the pros taking over because they've got air conditioning and everything else as well. I think that we have seen perhaps a hole in the regulations here. I know about Carter Kane and his dislocated shoulder. I know about Stuart Hall, and if he was going to have his hand smacked, surely the time to do it was within an hour of it occurring, not 4.5, 5 hours later. But I do think that if they are really going to look at this thing sensibly on the view to drivers and the G-forces today and everything else, they have got to let teams have a reserve driver. If you go back, in fact, into the 50s, into the 60s, I remember that Aston Martin had reserve drivers. Jaguar had reserve drivers. Everybody had a reserve driver. Now, all he had to do was to go out and do 3 laps, if you like. but at least there should have been a reserve driver. And when I've seen some of the talent wandering around here in the commentary box here, come to that.
Well, ironically, Neville, of course, Collis did bring a reserve driver in the shape of Andy Merrick, but they never actually qualified him. He's a Le Mans virgin, didn't do 10 laps on Wednesday night, which he could have done. The regulation was there that you could do that, and if they had, of course, when nothing...
They would have been much better off, wouldn't they?
Lorenz Carthacain, I don't know if everyone knows what happened, but he jumped over the pit wall during the pre-grid show, and he put his shoulder out doing that. It was as simple as that. He did have an injury, of course, before the first race of the season.
Yes, he did.
Had a karting crash, couldn't take his seat in the Collis car at Barcelona for the Catalonia 1,000 kilometres. Was better by Spa, had a normal race at Spa, comes here, does 2 or 3 nights of practice, put the car off a couple of times, but apparently the dislocation is absolutely nothing to do with the injury he had from karting. It was sort of a back strain, nothing worse than that. But quite extraordinary. And as you say, and this is a question I want to ask you tonight. We're all shocked that Stuart Hall has been excluded from the meeting with no right of appeal. 27 years I've been coming to Le Mans, I've never met this before.
I was just trying to remember. There was a case. The problem is if I don't have my database in front of me, it's hard to find these things. But as you and Liz were talking about that, I do recall a case, believe it was in the early 80s when a driver was disqualified, somewhat similar circumstances. I do recall a case somewhat later in the 1980s where a particular driver, Japanese driver, whose name I really don't recall, drove just a few laps and was not up to speed, and he was politely asked
I remember that.
To drive.
I think there is a point here which we have got to perhaps look at. The Stuart Hall incident I didn't see, so I'm not really qualified to comment on it, to give an opinion. If I had seen it, I probably would say what I think, but since I haven't, I can't. Talking to people who have driven here, and I'm not talking about who are here today, because I have talked to a few of those as well, but one of the things that I have found out from talking to someone who has a very analytical mind towards everything he does, and that included his race driving, he tells me that, strangely enough, a lot of the really quick cars, the drivers are used to basically leaving people to make their own arrangements. Now that's as it should be. In other words, if you want to pass the slower guy, you get on and do it. If the slower guy just gets on with what he's doing and you get on with what you're doing, theoretically everything will be all right, fine. But there has been a lot of carving up. I've been watching it. I haven't seen at Le Mans, as I have seen this year, quite so many carving up moments. And there have been a lot of it, I can assure you. I've watched it. I've said it before, a professional spectator, and there's been a lot of carving up today, particularly in the darkness hours. Now I think that everybody thinks, right, well, it's dark, it's a little bit cooler, the air's a bit better, I can go a bit faster, and we've had, as we know, an awful lot of people have had a few problems. They're trying to get back, and there's a lot of anxiety there. But I think that poor old Stuart, you know, that's been a bit naughty. That was, you know, somebody said a drive-through. Yeah, all these things. But excluded from the meeting, excluded from the car, and told to get off our ground as well. I think that's a bit naughty. I think that's taking it a bit far.
It doesn't go quite as bad as that. There was no right of appeal. But no, I mean, the accident, we saw the accident, we saw it played ad infinitum. I'm sure you did, Janos, that he looked in his mirrors, I think. He saw an Audi bearing down on him and just sort of tried to get out of the way, but unfortunately...
reacted to the one and collected the other.
It happened right on the entrance to the pit lane, so maybe in his mind that the Radical was going into the pits, and that by the time he got there, it wouldn't be there. It wasn't to be there.
A misjudgment.
Right. By all measure, I think that was, and to use it, can't think of a better term, but an honest mistake. And all drivers will make that. It was obviously not deliberate. Could he have done things a little differently? Well, of course. But I think the problem with the disqualification is it didn't take into account the whole picture of who he is, that he's not someone who's not normally aggressive, known for doing that. There are any number of drivers who a penalty like that is appropriate to, because it's like look, you've been close to this situation before, now you've stepped over the line and you deserve a penalty.
Yeah.
That's often the case. Stewart is not by any stretch an example of sometimes what's been complained a lot about in racing today, where you have, because racing ultimately is relatively safer today than
you
it was
like
in the
me
past.
could make a list of people who you'd say, well,
Yes.
I know about him and I know about him. Stewart isn't one of them, is he?
Absolutely not.
Yeah, I know exactly
No, I
what
mean,
you mean.
what he did in 2007 speaks for itself.
Yeah,
Finished fourth
exactly.
overall behind
Yeah.
two factory
Yes.
Audis and the Pescarolo in the Roll Centre. Pescarolo he shared with Martin Short. Absolutely outstanding debut at Le Mans. Last year here with Johnny Molam in the creation, did a good job again. The car retired after 21 hours, but still did a good job. And by no means is he what we used to call a rockate. You know, he's not someone who picks a car up, throws it around, knocks people off. And he's a very constant, steady, good endurance driver. I think we've probably taken that thread far
I think we've gone as far as we can go with that
Well,
at the moment.
the only thing I would add to that is that the reality is, one can say, well, it's the ACO has gotten out of hand and all that. But the reality is, no matter how you set the rules and no matter how good the organizers are, controversies like this will occasionally rear their head. And it's happens with every sanctioning body in every series. At some point or other, it's going to happen. It shouldn't, but it does.
Well, the stewards will have deliberated, and we're not in a position to question that.
No, it's just that they took rather a long time to do it.
And
That's one of the things that I feel is rather unhappy.
It's their race, it's their ball.
Yeah.
You know, it's Yanis, your Elva book, what's it called and when's it going to be ready?
It has when I mention sometimes to people that I'm writing an Elva book, right away they'll say "She Goes," which is what Elva is a corruption of the French term for "She Goes," and that is of course a natural title, but the real title will be, well, Elva subtitled "The Cars Just Happen," and that actually comes from a phrase from an expat Brit who was working as a mechanic for one of the Elva distributors in the United States, and his boss sent him to the Elva factory in England to have a look and see what's going on. And he came back with this description of kind of just amazed at how there'd be somebody in one corner pounding panels, somebody else in another corner turning a wrench on an engine. And he said, at the end of the day, the cars just happen. There's no explanation for it.
It's a lovely way of putting it.
And I think it's a good way of putting it, really, the way that whole cottage industry of automobiles during those days took place.
Yeah, we'll come back to that in a moment or two. I think it's probably, as well as we've got now a little situation developing. We've got, of course, David Brabham versus McNeish. Now, that's fun, isn't it, really? I mean, David, the youngest son of Sir Jack, in a car that had not heretofore shown itself to be the quick car of the team.
Yeah, but this is even more serious. We've got Ralf Juttner and Wolfgang Ulrich, who are obviously in deliberation with the ACO technical people at the moment. Something's going on here. We don't know what it is, but let's just wait and see. Yanis Ripfen, thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Hope you enjoyed the rest of the race. We're going to take a break and look forward to seeing your book in the autumn.
Well, it's all looking a bit quiet at the moment at one Aston Martin, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure why. He's got the door open. There's a hold sign up in front of the car, and nobody's telling us why.
All we've been told is that 008 stop and go penalty, and it's a long one. It looks like a minute, maybe more. Now, this of course is not the car that Stuart Hall was in earlier. This is the 008 car, and that's so we just it's been a long time. We're seeing a few technical infringements at the moment, obviously, because Audi have had the technical commissioners in their garage arguing the toss with Ralf Juttner and with Dr. Wolfgang Ulrich. So what's going on? We'll just try and wait and find out, let you know as soon as we can. But the position at the moment, Peugeot leading, David Brabham at the wheel for Alain McNeish for Audi, Frank Montagny for Peugeot, Simon Pagenaud for Pescarolo Peugeot, and then it's Thomas Enger for the other Aston Martin Lola. This Aston Martin Lola, the one of Jos Verstappen, the 008 car, running in 12th place. Now some 9 laps down on the Brabham after problems.
The speed of the Aston has quite amazed everybody, I think. It has closed the gap. I mean, when we were looking last year at the petrol cars and the diesel cars, there was a much bigger gap than there is at the moment. And I think the Astons have done remarkably well to have a car still sitting up there in 5th place. It's not, let's face it, got the absolute pace of the diesels, but it's being driven well, it's being maintained well. The other car has had its problems. In fact, the other 2 cars have had their problems. And the other thing, of course, that I think amuses us all is that at last, Henri Pescarolo, one of the strictest critics of diesels, has got one. And in it is a man who has spent the last couple of 3 years or so in America, and is hardly known in Europe. Came back and suddenly everybody's saying, who's this? Who's this Frenchman? Well, he's proven very, very clearly that he is a very hot shoe. Look at his lap times.
Yeah, that's Simon Pagenaud that Neville's talking about. He's in the Pescarolo Peugeot and done a really good job from this evening. We said earlier, Simon, that one victory would be very, very popular here, apart from Peugeot winning, if it's the Pescarolo Peugeot, because Henri is still the most popular man at Le Mans.
Well, I think what said it all for me, I watched the start from the balcony just beyond where we do our commentary, where you can see a perfect view of the pit lane and of the grille de départ, I think is my very bad French, but the starting grid, and the cheer that the car got when it was wheeled to the grid as they announced the cars was much bigger than any of the other cars. So he very much is not only obviously a folk hero, having won Le Mans 4 times in various different cars over many, many years for Porsche, for Matra, of course. Couldn't get much more French than Matra, really, could you? Peugeot, as great a job as they're doing for the Gloire de France, Matra were epitomising everything that was going on at the back of the day. But also, you know, the guy has very much been developing young French talent. Let's not forget the La Filière program that he was very much involved with. You mentioned Simon Pagenaud, but there's so many young French drivers that we see in Le Mans at the moment. Not only Pagenaud, we see guys like Benoit Treilleux, these kind of guys that have come through. Of course, Bourdais was a La Filière driver. In fact, when I was racing myself in Formula Renault in the late 90s, Bourdais was racing at the same time, and everybody's raving about this young, bespectacled French kid. And you know, that's the sort of thing that Pescarolo has done. Not just what he's done as a driver, but also what he's done is bringing people through.
Race leader David Brabham, then this is pit stop number 16. They're way ahead on pit stops, but they're also leading the race. So that must prove something. 171 laps. Brabs has now completed against 170 McNish, but McNish has at this time made 3 less pit stops. He's due, I think, in the next 10 or 15 minutes to make his next one. He's running 13 laps on the fuel they've got. He is in the second of, this is McNish we're talking about, he's in the second of what hopes to be a quadruple shift on the same set of tyres. That's what they're doing now. Montagny in third, Pagenaud is talking about in fourth, Thomas Enger in 5th place in the 007 car is Montagny. Indeed, the 3rd place car is Vettel. This will bring his pit stop score up to 15. So the Audi's better on fuel, but they're not better on pace.
No, they just seem to be at a point where they unless there's something dramatic that happens to the Peugeots in terms of pure speed, they really haven't seemed to have an answer. And we've been hypothesising about this all day as to what this may well be. And I think the simple bottom line is that the R15 just isn't as developed. The 908 is so well developed, has a great group of engineers. Peugeot have learned from last year in terms of the logistics and the strategy. Although watching the chaos that was the mistakes that happened at the beginning of the race, you would wonder.
They're inclined to get into a sort of, well, there's a lovely expression about this, they're knickers in a twist, aren't they? They really are. You only have to go boo and oh, it's all gone funny.
Well, I think maybe what happened though, Neville, is that perhaps that incident early on in the race kind of really shook them to the point of going, come on guys, we've got the job, we've got the kit to do the job this year. We've always known we've had a quick car. We've got some tremendous drivers, experienced drivers as well, and not just fast. And we all know there's a big difference between being fast and actually being able to deliver at Le Mans, especially of all places. But nevertheless, they're in a situation now where they seem to have just been able to maintain that consistent pace with all of the drivers in all of the cars. And despite the problems the 8 car had, for example, that's now in a situation where it's genuinely closing down and looking like it's going to be able to challenge McNish regularly.
Just looking at the overall classification there, Peugeot, Audi, Peugeot, Lola, Aston Martin and Audi. That's all factory cars there. If you include the Peugeot, the Pescarolo Peugeot, the factory car. What we're not seeing at the moment is LMP2. Massive battle throughout most of the afternoon and evening between the Essex Porsche Spider and the Japanese Navi Go Porsche Spider. The Navi car had a problem about an hour ago. They have lost 3 laps, and that's dropped them back into the clutches of the number 33 Speedy Racing Lola Judd, the blue and silver Judd coupe, as opposed to the red P1 car, and that's just been taken over by Benjamin Leuenberger, and he is knocking on the door now of that Japanese Porsche, so watch that space of interest.
No question about it that that is a ding-dong battle, and I'm surprised actually that the number 5 car, who's got Ara in that car, Seiji Ara in that car at the moment, he did have a long stop, didn't he?
Had a nose box change.
Yeah, nose box change. I don't know why, but I presume probably rubbish, probably ran over something. That's something that we've come across here at Le Mans, and it comes seemingly more and more as we come up towards the early hours of the morning. There seems to get an awful lot more rubbish on the road. I suppose it's because if you run a wet wise, you bring some gravel on and this sort of thing. But it did seem to be a problem last year.
Yeah, and then the other thing, of course, in the daylight, you notice there's debris on the track that you can see cars avoiding it. You don't necessarily see it at night, do you?
No.
Simon, you know about this.
Yeah, I mean, it's very easily done. And the thing is that sometimes you're following, especially with this situation. We saw a classic example of the problems you have as a race driver. Where Sarrazin in qualifying was on one of his laps that looked likely for him to take pole before he ultimately did so. Came across Tom Christensen. Tom Christensen was in turn closing on a GT2 car. As they came into the chicane, the GT2 car stayed where it was. Christensen went one way, and at the last minute moved the other way. Now, the point really is that for us watching the onboard of Sarrazin's car, we weren't aware of the GT2 car until Christensen moved around it. So put that in context of something on the road. If you're right up behind someone and the guy in front of you moves one way, then you absolutely have no chance of doing anything about it.
Yep.
And the closing speed of these guys obviously is just absolutely immense.
And look at this, riding with Stefan Sarrazin in the 3rd place, number 8 Peugeot Total car, really carrying speed, these cars now. But that lap is just done. That's his out lap, 4:54 straight out the pits. But that car has done a 3:24. So has the other Peugeot. Just looking down the order to see who it was. Yeah, the Christian Klein car. That was actually set earlier on this evening on a 3:24 as well, and that was by Nick Manassian. So that's the 2 fastest laps of the race at the moment, both on 3:24, and I mean, of course, that is only 2 seconds off pole, and that is almost unheard of.
Well, I mean, if you remember last year, Sarrazin was in the pole time was at 3:18.5, and he was doing 3:19.6 in the race. So that shows you how well the Peugeot can run in different configurations. But what really impresses me there is you've made a really good point there, Mark, about the fact that 3:24.628 is the fastest lap by Nicolas Manassian, 3:24.844 by Stefan Sarrazin. 0.2 of a second around a lap like this. That is, put that into context. If you were racing at somewhere like Silverstone, which is still a decent sized circuit, still a 3.5 mile circuit, you probably would be missing pole by maybe 100th or 200ths of a second. That's how close and how quick these guys are.
It is very close. I mean, I was going to say when we were talking a few minutes ago about people being carved up one thing and another, always at Le Mans there has been a problem about the speed differential. The speed differential between the slower cars and the faster cars. Ever since I can remember reading reports of the race, if you go back into the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, you know, people coming across in the nicest possible way, a Saab, you know, maximum speed, about 105 miles an hour, flat out with the wind behind it, downhill, and a Jaguar. And at that time, there was not the huge plethora of drivers who have the experience. There are a lot more experienced, very good, very quick drivers today. But the other thing that has happened here, and I think that we've all been conscious of it, we talked about it in practice, and that is that the aerodynamics have been changed. They've been changed because the Automobile Club of the West felt that the speeds were getting higher and higher. They wanted to see the lap time down to about a 4:30, if I remember rightly. That was the one that was being quoted at us all. That's what they thought it should be. And it was 19. 3:30, I beg your pardon. Yeah. I'm looking at the screen and being silly. Yeah. 3:30 as opposed to, you know, 3:19, 3:18.
It was a good 10 seconds basically away
good
from
10, 12 seconds. Yeah. Now, what has happened is because you have lessened the aerodynamic effect, or because, as Audi have, you've gone down a different road in the hope of getting more back, you've actually got a lot more nervous cars.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think perhaps this is the explanation of where Audi's sitting, is that they've got a car which they still haven't really got on top of, because as we've heard, they had no pre-race tests which they normally would have had. They had a very, very difficult free practice session because it was basically wet pretty much for the whole duration of it. And then qualifying was the only time, and in qualifying obviously you have a different objective. You can't really risk playing with setup, playing with aero, playing with things like that. These cars are more even than perhaps an F1 car. One great big wing. If you look at the thing, it just looks like an enormous, great big aerodynamic device. The Peugeot is in its third year. It's established. We know it works. The Audi, they've gone radical. They had to do that to try and get on top of the Peugeots, which were quicker than the R10s last year. And to be honest, at the moment it looks like they're close, but they're not quite there as well. Maybe Sebring flattered them a little bit. I don't know.
They've got. I think it did, and also the one thing the Peugeot obviously have learned their lessons from last year. They have learned their lessons, and they've learned them very well. I don't know, as I've said, it seems to me that somewhere along the line, I know that Audi do a fantastic job. They have a whole load of guests here. They have a load of people here. I just wish they'd had perhaps one more race. You know, it just seems to me that they've got the right idea, but they haven't perfected it yet, and it's hurting a lot. One of the things, you see, when we had the practice on Wednesday, which was the first time anybody had come to Le Mans in 2009, and there hadn't been a practice day, it was wet. Now that was helpful, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, totally unrepresentative in terms of getting a real handle on the car. All the guys were trying to do is just to get a balance on the car in the wet, because obviously there's a reasonably good chance it could be the same for the race weekend. So far, so good.
Guys, problems for creation here. The creation yard, Roman now to just bring that car back into the pits. Jamie Campbell-Walter, Vanina Ricks having a fairly trouble-free runs. Romain got on this car about 2 hours ago. It's now being pushed back into the garage, and we hoped that Creation had left all their troubles behind them after a dreadful Wednesday, a pretty bad Thursday, but the race seemed so far to have been going well. It may be no more than just something that needs attention. You put the car in the garage so you can throw every mechanic you've got at it. You're only allowed 4 in the pit lane, but let's just watch that space for a moment.
Well, I hope so, because when Vanina Ricks got out of the car, she looked pretty happy, and she doesn't often look really happy, that girl, does she?
She told us that had very few problems. Sergiara goes back out, that second car in LMP2, and just before we saw that, while you two were having a chat, we saw Bruce Giovanni bring in the Pescarolo, the open Pescarolo, from 8th place. Christian Klein from 9th place. I hope we see a replay of Christian's pit stop, because when we saw inside the car, Christian actually rolled back his sleeve, looked at his watch, and then got on with the business of driving. So perhaps he's got a hot date later tonight, but I don't know. We don't know quite what he was doing. I've not ever seen that before during a pit stop.
I don't think I'm going to tell any stories about that, but once upon a time, there was a driver here who did have a very hot day. They did win the race, but his re-arrival back at the circuit to do his stint in the car was, shall we say, a little narrowly cut.
I don't think we need any of those, do we, Neville, tonight? So the race pace now settling down to around the 3:30s for all the top runners. 3:33.29 for McNish. In fact, his fastest man on the circuit was just fastest man on the circuit till Simon Pageau's just done a 3:27. So, but that's where they are, thereabouts. The top 6 runners all just around the 3:30 bracket. But Pageau's just done his car's fastest third sector of the night, and that's the really long sector, all the way from Mulsanne corner back to the finish.
That was a sector that effectively got Sarrazin pole, because if you remember back, he had didn't have a particularly good first part of the lap when he did his pole lap, but the last sector was absolutely awesome. He managed to find a massive amount of time. I think something like 3 seconds he found. So that is the real big boys section of the lap, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. Pagenaud, we've heard everybody talking glowingly about the guy, Mark. We know a little bit about him from what he's been doing in Europe recently, but Jeremy Shaw, of course, has followed him in the States recently, the last few years, with all kinds of things that he's done. And the guy is clearly a bit of what a lot of the race teams like to call a mega, as in a mega driver. And that performance, a 3:27.7 at this stage in the race, in a situation where he's clearly pushing to potentially get himself into a podium position, is a pretty awesome thing. And there's absolutely no doubt that Pagenaud has got the mark of a man that the works team are going to look at and say, well, he's French and he's really fast, so why not? Let's put him in one of our works cars.
That Michelin engineer just came out of the garage, looked up at the sky, and we have had varied meteo reports coming tonight that it might rain at 2 in the morning and it might not rain till 1 o'clock lunchtime. It's a very clear moon, as we just saw from that shot.
That had caused a bit of trouble, wouldn't it?
That doesn't look too well.
Yeah.
Of course, last year we all sort of
about 4 o'clock, Simon, wasn't it? When you and I were sitting here, and I said, Simon, it's rain. You said, is it? I said, yeah. And after that, it all went one way, didn't it?
Yeah, but it's just the way that Michelin engineer walked out of the garage, looked up at the sky, and you think, well, why is he looking up? I mean, why would he even think of doing that on a lovely clear night? And we just saw the moon.
I like, as a phrase, a friend of mine, a young man called James Hayden, you may know, he does some commentary for Eurosport on motorcycles. He says, as a bike racer, when you see rain on your visor, it's actually psychological rain.
Yes.
In other words, it's not actually made much difference to the grip level at that point, but a few little spots of rain, the brain says, I don't like this, I don't like the fact that there's rain here.
Well, presumably that's motorpsychological rain.
Motorcycological, exactly. Well, we all know that bike races, by definition, and therefore are completely and utterly bonkers anyway.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that earlier on this evening, just as it was getting dusk, I looked out and I saw quite a lot of what I felt was mist.
Yeah, Martin noticed.
And that seems to have gone for a burn.
No, that was smoke, barbecue smoke.
Well, no, I don't think it was. Some of it was, but I think a lot of it was that the actual change in the temperature that was taking place. I don't know, I haven't been out for a while. I'm shut up here, you know, sort of like being put in a tin box. I've got a sun behind me. You've just come up. Is it as hot and as close outside as it was, John?
It isn't as close as it was, but it's still quite warm.
He says it is not as close as it was, but... Right.
Evening, John, welcome up here. So the Hay family can't stay away. Richard, of course, raced here a few years back, made his debut, didn't he? Had a great time in the TVR squad.
Oh, yeah. Had a lot of fun here, actually, but that's another story.
Anyway,
we'll come back after the break.
You're back with Eurosport at Le Mans, the 77th running of the world's greatest race. We're just coming up to the 11-hour mark. That'll happen in about 12 minutes' time. We're still looking at creation. They've been in the garage now for a very, very worrying 10 or 12 minutes, and seeing Dave Bembo and his team, Mike Jankowski, Patrick Lanehunt, all getting onto that car. But they've got a problem there on the right-hand side of the car. I don't know what they're working on. There's a lot of electronics down there, aren't there?
Yeah, there are indeed. And I think the problem we have with a modern prototype car is that obviously, like all of the cars, are having to run much more like a sprint race used to be back in the day. And obviously, once upon a time, Le Mans and other endurance races were quite often a percentage game. Stay off the curbs, don't rev the car too hard, don't push too hard, etc., etc. Not like that anymore, as we know. It's an absolute flat-out sprint, but therefore and by definition, you have to take everything to the limit.
Well, we were talking this morning when we had the hysterics going around, and somebody said, well, what would you like to see, Nev? And I said, well, the whole point about it is this, is that you can't turn the clock back. Let me say that, folks, straight away before you start ringing, writing and say, getting rid of that old fool there. You can't turn the clock back. This is the way it is, and I can't see that it's going to go any other way. But it would have suited my ideas very well if we could differentiate a little bit between what I call racing sports cars and sports car racing cars, and that's where the whole thing started to get out of line. That's where you had cars that were, within broad terms, totally impractical as road vehicles. They were just racing vehicles.
Yeah. If you think back to sort of the mid-90s, when we went away from the sort of Group C era into what was then we went to GT racing, when McLaren won Le Mans in 1995 with what was, and that era then of cars that were essentially obviously supercars, but they were still, you could see that they were still based on a road car. And of course we have that with the 430s, we have that with the Spike, we have that with the 997s, and of course to a lesser degree with the GT1 cars. Prototypes has always been a place for that kind of car, an evolutionary car. However, we now got to the point where that gap has just become ridiculously huge.
Now, to me, I would like to see Le Mans. I would like to see Spa, 6 hours if you like, Silverstone, 6 hours, go to America, Sebring, run for the type of car that actually, if you've got enough money, you could buy. I would like to see the scrutineering, for example, for this race held in Paris, and every car road registered in the country of origin. So it drives up here and meets up with the rest of the team, and it practices, and there are spares, and there's everything else as well. But at least the whole thing is a believable intent of development. And in terms of modern cars, let's have a prototype, and let's have a prototype law.
Problems here with the 007 car. This is Lola Aston Martin's lead car. They've got the engine cover off. Got a problem with the slats on the side there. Now, this could be just a technical thing, Simon. Regulations are very, very strict, aren't they, about slats? They must be in place, whether they're viewed from above or from the side. Looks like they're just working on those. Must be some little issue there.
Yeah, it could be some contact potentially. I mean, obviously that's the thing that would look like most likely to have been happening, as we see Matthew Marsh there in the cockpit of the Cruise-Schiller car, which has had a fairly traumatic day with all kinds of ins and outs, and then see the team working frantically to get that one sorted. Matthew, of course, very familiar, those of you that are based in the Far East, has done an awful lot of racing over there in the Asian Carrera Cup, and another bit of sports car racing in Europe. Englishman, but based out in the Far East, very experienced, 40 years old, and a friend of a guy called Brian Saunders, who those of you who followed national racing back in the late 80s, early 90s will know was a very, very good racing driver. Matthew very calmly sitting there, letting it all work on around him. This is a tough time, and you've just made a point, Mark, which just kind of really hit home for me. We're not even at half distance yet. It's just hit me that, you know, it seems to be so much going on. I mean, we know that, you know, we have the Sebrings, the 12 hours of this world that give us this fantastic race, but this just feels like we've had about 5 races in one day already.
Well, we certainly had 4 Grand Prix already, haven't we? So
Aston Martin back in the race.
Yeah, but we don't know what the problem was, but it was certainly looking at that side slap. Matthew Marsh, by the way, he was here before, drove a Ferrari here 2 years ago, so he's not a Le Mans virgin. He's actually back for more, and of course he's got some competition from Hong Kong, hasn't he, with the Performance Asia car this year. Yep. I don't know if any of you saw it. I'm sure you did, like I did, down on the grid today. The Chinese Dragon that preceded the car, amazing. I just love all that pomp and circumstance. Of course, that Dragon's for good luck, and they need it.
They do indeed, and I was slightly more impressed by the very spectacular grid girls they had, but that's just me, I'm afraid.
Well, I've got a Dragon at home.
But yeah, I mean, Darrell O'Young, another driver that's raced in Asia, very, very successful Hong Kong-based driver. It's
a suspension
problem of some sort.
Well, they've got the whole upright off at the moment. Just taken that off, and just telling Ianetta there what bits to push and which not in the creation.
Trying to hear what the boys were saying there.
Birmingham Spanner, look.
Spanner, yeah.
Dave O'Neill is involved there at the back of the car. Dave O'Neill has been team manager for A1GP Team Ireland, of course won the World Cup of Motorsport this year, a very experienced man, and Stuart and a few of the lads there working with him as well. The Peugeot guys pacing up and down. You're in an invidious situation at this point in the race now. It seems like you've done an awful lot of the donkey work, as we said, yet less than halfway, but at the moment David Brabham and the rest of the guys in the 9 car wouldn't want to be anywhere else as we ride on board with the 63 car. Our leader, Antonio Garcia, of course, a winner here last year in the Aston, in the DBR9. Very, very talented. Everybody I know that's worked with this guy says he is a superstar, this kid. He's really, really good.
Hang on, just let's listen to the throttle work. It's just lovely to hear the way he's just sort of holding that thing on the throttle. Look.
Just as he comes into the pits.
That car certainly has brought itself up into the top 17 now. So that's again a GT1 car running in the top 17 in a field of 36 prototypes. I mean, that is pretty impressive, isn't it? And they've just pushed, in fact, Chris Dyson down into 19th place. Chris Dyson in the number 25 RML Lola Mazda. Good run for them, and they'll be cheering in Northampton tonight that the car's got this far. Had a dreadful start to the season. In Barcelona and Spa, they had engine detonations caused by the specified fuel that the organisation insists on, which the anti-knock properties are not good in this. Since AER have had to really, really wind back the timing on the turbo cars, and it just seemed to be paying off as far as we're aware. And touch wood, there's been no turbo engine failures tonight, and this Garcia car then in the pits gets refueled. This is the lead car, in fact. Driver change, and just a driver change, or they're just changing his...
I think they did have a driver change. I think Antonio got out of the car. I think it may be Jan that's got in the car. Couldn't quite see the crash helmet properly there, but...
No need for cool suits, of course, now, because there is a stipulation they must have 32-degree temperature, no more in the cockpit. The air conditioning in all the closed cars, including the prototypes this year.
And it makes a difference.
Yeah, but it
means
you don't have to have the cool suits and the bottles of water, the big ice buckets and things.
Awful, wasn't it, really? Let's just go through, for those of you who might have come home, switched on and thought who's doing what with which and to whom. Number 9, the Peugeot, currently in the hands of David Brabham, the youngest of the Brabham brothers, leads the Le Mans 24-hour race 2009, having completed, as I look at the screen, 177 laps, and 2 minutes and 40 seconds, 0.408 behind him is currently Alan McNeish in the only one.
Well, it's actually a lap down. But,
of the Audis that, yes, we've just decided he is a lap down. The only one of the Audis, gone click now, that really is, shall we say, on the pace.
Right, that's Alan's now completed 2 shifts in this car. This is his third. He's about to start, so look for him completing a 4th shift at the end of this time. I'm sure he will. They won't touch the tyres. They've just done the fuel, check around the front of the car, make sure the radiators are fairly clear, and out he goes. And as they do that,
Peugeot number 8 in 3rd place, Sarrazin in 4th place, 17. That's the Henri Pescarolo Peugeot. Pagenot, the new hot shoe. And then in 5th place, the Aston Martin, which has got Thomas Enger at the wheel of it. The big, tough, and he is a hard check, but he's a lovely bloke. And he's an inspiration of that team, because I'll tell you one thing about Thomas, he never gives up. He tries and tries and tries. He's got a heart like a lion.
Now, the connection here, Roman Neonetti, we just saw sitting in the Creation car, 4th participation at Le Mans, but he's actually a film stuntman, and he has done a lot of work in America. Now, Patrick Dempsey here also has done a lot of work in America, not as a stuntman, but as a quasi-surgeon. His car, of course, running with the charities. They're raising money for children in the hospitals in Seattle, as they do in the States, but also for one of the major children's surgical hospitals in Paris. There's been an agreement between the ACO and the ALMS over this. Patrick Dempsey, star of Grey's Anatomy, not so well known in Britain as it happens in France and Germany. Huge in France, and he's just been absolutely mobbed by photographers, paparazzi, in the public wherever he walks around here. And before you two joined me this evening, we remarked, I was standing talking to Dario Franchitti, and there's Patrick Dempsey and the mob swept by. I didn't even notice Dario. Indy 500 winner, IndyCar champion, married to a Hollywood actress. I mean, no, I'm not interested, you know.
Well,
I'll tell you a funny story about Patrick Dempsey. You mentioned about some of the films he's been in. There's a Disney film called Enchanted that he stars in, that my 6-year-old daughter Ellie is very quite keen on. And Out of the Mouths of Babes, they say, which she was watching a replay of qualifying. I was watching as he spun the car into the gravel, and she looked at me and she said, "Daddy, it's a good job he's a good actor."
That's very perceptive.
Very perceptive, yeah.
I'm just going to give a throw for my granddaughter Roxy. She's 7 months old today, and just want to say hello to her and the family. So she'll be here one day. I mean, my stepson's name is Rogers. I mean, Roxy Rogers. I mean, how cool is that?
Fantastic. She's a star already.
Patrick Dempsey, watch out. She'll be coming one day.
Well, why are you saying hellos and what have you? There are a couple of lads who couldn't come this year. The Rose Brothers. They are the, how can I put it, the comic geniuses of the little mob that come with John. And lads, I know you're looking in. And it's your care for your dogs that I care for, because they couldn't get someone to look after the dogs.
Well, there you go. There is a heart out there somewhere. That says how important their dogs must be, because if they love Le Mans as much as we love Le Mans, they would have much rather been here, I'm sure. Stop now for Dempsey taking over. He was pretty interesting that you see removing the film there. Effectively, it's the closed car version of a tear-off that a racing driver would normally put on his visor. You see Formula 1 drivers, and obviously the open-top prototypes, the Audis, for example, and some of the Pescarolo and other cars like that, the drivers have to put the tear-offs on. Very interesting little bit of delicate work you see when the drivers put them on. Usually there's about 3 or 4 layers of film that go on top of each other, and you'll see that the drivers at the end of each visor, or each end of his visor,
has a little kind of a sort of an angled part that sort of kicks forward so that he can just put his hand on the end of the visor and just tear one off, and therefore do it from the other side. So left, right, and that's how they do it. It's just taped into place. Many years ago in the early 70s, Chris Amon was famously one of the most talented, but sadly never to win a Grand Prix racing. Leading the Italian Grand Prix in 1972, went for a tear off.
Tore the lot off.
The whole lot came off.
Everything,
190 mile an hour breeze. Somehow managed to finish. They made them tough in those days.
Yeah,
didn't
they did. We had a similar sort of thing. I can recall it won the British Grand Prix once. We're going for a break very shortly. We'll be looking at also the class positions when we come back, because they're interesting and they're close.
So we look forward
Join
to
us
seeing
again.
you in a few
We'll
moments.
be back.
We will, Nev. We'll see you here on Eurosport after the break.
All the passion of the Le Mans 24 Hours with Total Quartz Eneo Lubricants. Go to Eurosport.yahoo.com for all you need to know about football, tennis, motorsport, rugby and cricket. With news, views, expert analysis, stats, live coverage, video and fantasy sports, Eurosport.yahoo.co.uk is your one-stop shop for a world of sport. Share all the passion of the Le Mans 24 Hours with Total Quartz Eneo Lubricants.
Mitchell, partner of Endurance Racing and Mitchell and Green X Challenge.
Welcome back on Eurosport. Le Mans 24 Hours 2009, 77th running of this event, and my goodness me, Neville Hay, do we have a race on our hands? Not only is the action at the front very close, and still at this stage of the race, less than half distance, let's not forget. There's a very small gap between the leading Peugeot, the number 9 Peugeot of David Brabham from the McNish Audi, and then the third position Peugeot, Stéphane Sarrazin, the pole position car. We've got a bit of a replay, I think, coming up here of some action from a little bit earlier. These are our leaders, so we have a very tired-looking Peugeot crew. But
yes, they look exhausted, don't they?
They do indeed.
They really
enjoying
do.
the fact that their man is number 1 at the moment.
I think one of the interesting things has been how well the older Audis have gone. They're comfortably up there, and anything goes wrong, which it sometimes does, they're going to be very well in the hunt, aren't they?
They are indeed. Especially impressive is the 6th position at the moment of the number 14 car, which is initially was down to be driven by Andre Lotterer, Charles Valsman and Narain Kartikeyan.
Now this is what a Peugeot sounds like if you're inside the car. Just listen carefully. Now the drivers tell me that if you've come from a petrol engine car to a diesel engine car, the lack of noise is something that it strikes you straight away, because you're used to something that's really revving high. I know that people who have got into diesel cars from petrol cars on road cars, they look and they sort of think, well, it's only showing 4,500 revs. I'd be doing 6.5.
Yeah, they use the torque is the answer, isn't it?
Exactly.
I tell you what I think is a very interesting thing with the diesel cars. First of all, both the manufacturers, Audi and Peugeot, have found a fantastic way of interpreting the rules to make sure they had the best possible opportunity of getting the fastest cars within the current regulations. Interestingly also, Volkswagen Audi Group, VAG, which own Audi, and PSA, which own Peugeot, in their respective fields, are probably two of the finest manufacturers of diesel engine road cars. So you can buy an Audi, a Volkswagen, a Seat, a Skoda, or a Peugeot or a Citroën, and be pretty sure that the HDI engines or the TDI in the case of the Audi are going to be pretty special. Having driven both of their versions of the cars, and a friend of mine I came down with has been driving a 407 HDI down here. Not only is it quiet and efficient and comfortable, tremendous economy, but also you'd actually prefer to drive into a petrol just from an enjoyment of driving time. It just gives you this wonderful feeling of effortlessness.
You are preaching to the converted. I have one of those other German cars that also are leaders in the diesel field. And I'm very surprised, actually, that they allowed all this to happen without actually putting their finger in the dike. But if you have, as I have, the opportunity to drive over a pretty challenging piece of road, it's called the Mountain, and it's in the Isle of Man.
Yes.
I can assure you.
I know of it. I've never experienced it, but I know of it.
I can assure you, driving over that in a diesel BMW, a quick diesel BMW, is every bit as thrilling, every bit as much fun as any petrol car I've ever had any time ever.
I don't doubt it. I'm personally a big fan as well, so understand that. But what I'm saying is that not only did they take the rules and work them to their advantage, but also they've used it as a brilliant marketing tool. I'm
Absolutely.
Speaking to Christian Steen, who's the Peugeot marketing manager for the UK, as the way that they've used this. Similarly, Audi have done the same thing, but Peugeot especially said, look, we know that people know that we build great diesel engines, whether it's in a 207, a 308, a 407, whatever it may be, but people don't actually necessarily think of it as a performance engine. Think of it as refined, low emissions of course. Peugeot, I think, manufacture more sub 130 gram cars than any other manufacturer in Europe, so that's very much part of their intrinsic marketing plan. The point really being is that we all know that they work brilliantly, but a lot of people are a bit,
haven't the first idea.
It won't be as much fun, it won't be fast, and it actually is. Now, we need to go back to the action and see what's been going on at the front. We see the Jet Alliance car, the Aston, which is now they've taken the boot lid off, which tends to tell me it's something to do with the fuel system, because that's where
that's something new, isn't
the
it?
tank would be in the back part of the car.
It's sad in a way that there's no challenge really from Aston to the Chevrolets here, and we were looking at the classes, and just update you on that, we obviously know that we've got the Brabham Peugeot in the lead from McNish with the Audi. That's 9 and 1 if you like the numbers, and you can see the numbers of course for those of you who are watching the television. And then Sarrazin in third place. Moving down quickly, then we have got Collard, Emmanuel Collard, with the Porsche in number 31, and he now is with 170 laps on the board. If I've got it right, only 6.456 seconds behind him is Melot's car, which is quite remarkable. That's the Orica car. Beg your pardon, different class. No, it's the other Porsche, the Arai Porsche, number 5, who lost a bit of time. He's lost a bit of time in that car, but he's still on the board there. And then the next car in that class is the Lola, the Leuenbach Lola, with 165 laps, so he's another 2 laps behind. We'll talk about the others in a second. Led at the moment, as far as the big Chevrolets are concerned, by Jan Magnussen with the Corvette.
Yeah, the vets, obviously, we always expected them to pretty much dominate, and it was really not so much a matter of if they'd be at the front, it was which one would be at the front, and it's clearly been the case. Great job by Jan Magnussen, who's become an absolute, well, we always knew he was a superstar. I remember him in his single-seater days in Formula 3 being touted as the next Senna, and certainly his performances there indicated that would be the case. Had a bit of a rough time when he got to F1, but re-established himself as a single-seater sports car superstar. We look at the Essex team, the green and white Porsche that is leading its class with Manuel Collard on board, but about to be a driver change. And
I don't think he had, how can I put it, the personality that clicked there. Finishing up that class, the other Corvette of Fassler, number 64. That's a good quick car muscle. Fassler, 32 years old, going very well in that car. That's not one of the actual American entries, which is really good. Actually, I like to see them do well. We're on board the Peugeot once again. You can hear that diesel beat.
It's like a low sort of thrumming sound, is it? When you stand outside, we've got a balcony just near where our commentary position, which overlooks the start-finish straight. And you stand outside, and one of the things that I think impresses people who are new to Le Mans is the different sounds and smells and vibrations and everything that you get from different classes. And the Peugeots and the Audis kind of whistle past this wonderful sort of silent efficiency. You have this thunder, you can only describe it, that the Corvettes provide. You can feel, even we're on the 6th floor, you can feel the vibration from that wonderful old school American engine, much like you used to get with the Panos cars when they were racing here a few years ago. And then you have the scream of the petrol engine P cars and the very distinctive roar that you get from the Aston, the Paul Drayson Aston and the Jet Alliance car. So that's one of the things, it's that sensory experience that you get with Le Mans that you don't get with certain forms of single-seater racing. So now, the creation car, Jamie Campbell-Walter on board. We've seen it had problems earlier on with what looked to be like a suspension issue or something, certainly working.
Looks as if it's still got a suspension problem, doesn't it?
Yeah, they're bouncing up and down.
Leaping up and down on the front.
Very...
Better finish the classes off, because I didn't. 29th position, leading his class, the Cafe Ferrari, at which point the screen has just gone berserk, but it always does, doesn't it, when you're about to read something off.
The law of sod, I think they call it. Is that right, Nev?
That's about it. Yeah, it always happens to me.
Yeah, it's Pierre Caffer.
He's found another one over there that works even better.
The second place car in that class is the 92 car, the Rob Bell, Tim Sugden, Andrew Kokori car, the JMW Performance car, the Dunlop car as well. So
Sugden almost a veteran now, isn't he?
Oh, well, yes, I think he's been
45 years old, Tim,
Yeah, exactly. Him and his mate Richard Dean, of course. Both Yorkshiremen and proud running here. And third position is the Porsche, the Raymond Narak car, the IMSA Performance car that we saw being super quick early on. As you see the Ginetta going through. There are a lot of Ginetta flags around here. I'll tell you what I love about that, Nev, is that over the years we've all come to Le Mans. There's always been a massive amount of British contingent here, and any of the Brits that are at home watching this will probably be looking on longingly like your mates, the Rose brothers, thinking, oh, I wish I was there. I wish I was watching the racing, having a beer, having a barbecue, all the things that all the Brits do. But there's always a British manufacturer that people warm to, whether it's Jaguar, whether it's Aston, whether it was
TVR a year or two ago.
TVR. And now Ginetta has just captured people's imaginations. Now, Lawrence Tomlinson, who's the chairman of LNT and of Ginetta, Richard Dean, the managing director, have done something special in putting young Nigel Moore in that car. 17 years old. Let's put it into perspective. The entry formula for Ginetta as motorsport is the Ginetta Junior Series. 14 to 17-year-old kids can race alongside the British touring cars.
Tell me about your boys.
I'll tell you about my boy later. Jake
I know exactly what you mean.
But more importantly, Nigel Moore, not only did he win that championship 2 years ago, he's still eligible to compete in that series. At the start of this year, he could have done that series, and he's racing at Le Mans against Audi and Peugeot. And that shows you what Ginetta have done as a manufacturer to bring young talent through.
And they've done the right thing, because though not everything those guys do, everybody agrees with, the one thing they have done is to prove that if you've got a young talent like that, you've got to give it a chance. You and I have been sitting around here today, and apart from a very nice Scotsman who is back home to race again next week and has got a fantastic wife.
Would that be Mr. Frank Kitty?
Indeed, we've had a very pretty girl up here who is a more than capable driver. We've had another guy who is a very capable driver. They should be out there, and they ain't. Well, there's a very simple reason why. They haven't got a very large bag of gold to put down.
No, and having been a driver myself for a lot of years, I know that the situation, and not necessarily from my own point of view, I think I'm, I had a reasonable go and did okay. But the point is, I've raced against and worked with as an instructor some of the most talented guys I've ever seen that just never got a chance. One guy springs to mind is Matt Davis, who was a contemporary of Jenson Button. Daniel Weldon, we talked about Dario Franchitti winning the Indy 500. Daniel Weldon, of course, another young British talent did that. Matt Davis is the fastest thing I've seen on four wheels. Didn't quite get the opportunities, right car, right time. This is a guy you could put in one of these cars tomorrow, having not been in racing for a while, and he would deliver. And we all know we've got countless stories we can tell about
drivers. Another guy who I rated very, very highly.
Kevin McGarity, Dario's mate. There's just especially British talent as well. And let's be a little bit a bit biased just for a moment. Apologies to anyone that's listening who's not from Great Britain. But as British motorsport fans, we're very proud of the amount of very talented drivers that we've got, that we can provide. And certainly, you know, would there be a situation where, remember back in the 70s and 80s when Elf put all this money into French drivers, and look what it did. There were about 12 French drivers in Formula One at one point.
To be fair to him, and I'm not always fair to him because I'm not necessarily somebody who rings the bell for Sir Jackie Stewart on every occasion. He did actually try to do this, and he made a very good effort to try and do it with a Vauxhall Junior team, with Formula 3, with Formula 3000, and eventually Formula 1. And sadly, in the nicest possible way, it got away from him, didn't it? But the thought was there, and a damn good thought it was too.
Well, a lot of drivers. We talked about Dario Franchitti, we've talked about Jan Magnussen, we talked about you know, Alan McNish. Some of these guys have come into the top level motorsport as a result of PSR, as it was called, Paul Stewart Racing.
Yep.
Of course, it was Jackie's son, Paul, a pretty capable racing driver in his own right.
Capable driver.
But by his own admission, he got to a point in his career where he said, well, I'm not good enough to be a Formula One driver, but I'm a good businessman. And he was is a very good businessman.
Yeah.
And that sometimes has to happen, you know.
I admire a man who can do that because, let's face it, we've always said that there is this sort of thing that men have, and let's face it, I'm one of them, that they all believe we can drive extremely well. Well, sometimes that realization has to come to you. Well, look, hang on, I am not going to be world champion.
Yeah, exactly.
But I probably can make it for somebody else.
Exactly, make it. Christian Horner, another example, a very talented F3000 driver, now of course running Red Bull F1.
Talking about drivers, there's another one. Currently driving car number 9, currently in the lead of the 2009 Le Mans. Alex Wurz, a very good driver. He had 3 disadvantages. 1, he was far too good a test driver.
Yeah.
2, he was far too big.
Yeah.
And people, I don't know why they've got to get to people sort of 6 foot tall and over. It's a terrible thing. And thirdly, I suppose at the end of the day, he wasn't perhaps in the right place at the right time.
Well, if you remember when he first got into F1 with Benetton, he took over from Gerhard Berger, who had a sinus problem. He couldn't race for a while. It was stunning the first few races. We see, and now talking about talented drivers, Thomas Erdos, the Brazilian driver that has won his class in Le Mans.
Totally agree.
Fantastically talented, a charming man, a true professional, and an incredibly talented driver. And I'm just so pleased that Mike Newton gave Tommy the opportunity to do what we know he can do, be a professional racing driver in a great car with a good organisation, and has delivered the job year in, year out, and that's what we want to see. We want to see guys getting that kind of break. The break that Tommy's had, the break that Nigel Moore's had, the break. Another one that springs to mind, Danny Watts. What a superstar that kid is. Absolutely mega driver. And one of the nicest kids you could ever meet as well. But
at 29 years old, there's nobody going to say, come on down.
Maybe not as an F1 driver, but certainly in sports car racing, there's every chance he can get the opportunity.
I hope so.
Now, we've been wittering on a bit, Nev, as we do, unfortunately. Let's get back to let the lovely ladies and gentlemen at home understand exactly where we're at with this. The significant thing at the moment, you mentioned there, Alex Wurz leading the race as part of the Wurz, Genet and Brabham combination. At the moment, 3 minutes 34 is the gap between the Wurz leading car and the second place Audi of Alan McNish currently on board, who is lapping pretty quickly at this stage of the race. I think the times have dropped away a bit. Who is lapping very impressively at the moment is Simon Pagenaud in the privateer, the Pescarolo Peugeot. Was 3:28 previous lap, 3:29.1, which is at this stage of the race is pretty impressive stuff. Going down another impressive drive is the 14, the Colles Racing Audi R10. Just Andre Lotterer and Charles Voltzmann, because the third driver, Lorraine Cartikayan, carrying an injury, wasn't able to make the start of the race. What a handicap that was. Back in the day, you could just pluck one of your other drivers and pop them in, couldn't you, Nev?
He hurt himself, actually, apparently, climbing over the pit wall, which will teach him a lesson, because I nearly fell over doing exactly the same thing only a couple of days ago. But I'm very sorry for him, because he did deserve that opportunity.
A friend of mine, Simon Finnis, there working for Ginetta. I know Simon of years of old when I was racing single seats. He's a very talented and capable engineer, but however good you are, we all need our kip sometimes.
Yes.
Sorry, back to your point.
It does look actually as if, you know, he looked unconscious actually, didn't let everything kip. But you can see there are lots and lots of tired guys about at the moment. Lots of tired guys about, and there are going to be lots of tired drivers as well. This time of night, now everybody's got used to the dark. This time of night, it's not too bad. There's not too much mist around. When it starts to hurt again, of course, is when we've got in another 2 or 3 hours time, we shall begin to seeing dawn break, and then we get the half light, and that is another time. But as yet, of course, we haven't even got halfway towards the 2009 Le Mans 24-hour race, which is quite a sort of strange thing to think about when all the things that have happened in this race. We've seen it swing. It's swinging at the moment very much in the lap of Peugeot. But the race is there for them not just to win. The race is there, if they make a mistake, for them to lose.
We saw a wonderful onboard shot of Jan Magnussen, a man absolutely at one with his car. The 13 car doing a great job just outside the top 10. Nicolas Prost, of course, the son of the legendary Alain Prost, as David Brabham, son of another legend, is in the pit lane. Now, we're going to take a very short break here on Eurosport. We will be back very soon with more action from Le Mans 2009.